What's up?
Hi.
Welcome to this episode, this very special episode of Video Game Podtimism, the Optimist Video Game Variety Show, where we talk about Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories.
That was
and also
one cold open.
Yeah, we just said hi.
Really cold.
Sorry we don't have any bits of like the audio dynamics of the inside of Castle Oblivion or something.
Oh my God.
Doing the best we can out here. Hi. So this is, I guess, episode 2 in the series of us talking about Kingdom Hearts at length. Mm-hmm. Last time, just David and I did it, but this time there's another.
AJ. Sorry, I forgot. AJ. I should probably say
they're back.
Yeah, back again. I feel like this is like a monthly occurrence now. I just hop on the show to talk about a game.
Can't quit it.
We've had this one locked and loaded for a little while.
Yeah, since like pretty close to after the first Kingdom Hearts episode was released. You were like, maybe even before that.
Yeah. It could have been.
We have ideas.
How quickly we get to those ideas, that's another thing.
Another thing completely.
Thank you for being here, AJ. Appreciate you.
Delighted to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. We figured like Kingdom Hearts is so much about friends and companionship that like, why not bring on friends to talk about the video game?
Yeah.
Which may be a sort of hint about the future. If you haven't already put 2 and 2 together from a different podcast talking about Kingdom Hearts 2, we'll see. But hi. I'm Chase. I don't know if I said that or not.
Hi, Chase.
Hey.
I'm David.
Cool. Nice. All right. Great. So hey, let's talk about this video game.
Yeah.
History wise, who wants to go first? Who wants to talk about their history with this game, or AJ, in your case, your Kingdom Hearts history as a whole?
I guess I'll do my history as a whole, and then we can hop to Chain of Memories specifically.
Cool.
So I'm actually going to start at Chain of Memories because I am well documented on many different podcasts saying that I was a Sega Genesis and Nintendo kid. Mm-hmm. So I did not have the original PlayStation or PlayStation 2 until like early high school, which was 2009 for me.
Okay.
So well after Kingdom Hearts had come out.
Yeah.
And it had been rolling. But I had many friends who had PlayStations. So my main experience with the series in the beginning was watching my friends play it. I am the youngest of 4 siblings that are 8, 10, and 12 years older than me. So a lot of my early gaming experience is just watching them play games, which has now made me as an adult, and back then as a teen, I guess, somebody that loves watching people play video games. So I watched my one friend play through the entirety of Metal Gear Solid 4 over the course of like,
man.
Yeah, it was over the course of Christmas break, because they got it for Christmas with the PlayStation 3. And then we spent the next several days. I would go to their house every day and watch them play Metal Gear Solid 4. Neither of us had ever played a Metal Gear Solid game before. So it was it was a wild experience.
My goodness.
That's a whole different conversation.
Whoa.
But yeah, so a lot of my experience with Kingdom Hearts as a series was by osmosis. Mm-hmm. So I knew who Riku and Sora and Kairi were, but I didn't really like know the story or like what was going on. I was also not a Final Fantasy kid because I didn't have a PlayStation growing up. So like I didn't have any connection to any of the Final Fantasy stuff that was showing up. So basically my experience with Kingdom Hearts was like, this looks like a cool game. Wish I could play it. And then when Chain of Memories came out in 2005, I think, I was as a Game Boy Advance kid. So I was like,
Kingdom Hearts on my Game Boy Advance?
Fuck yeah, dude. Let me pick that up.
Nice.
And we could talk about this a little more when we actually start talking about Chain of Memories, but like honestly feels like kind of an ingenious marketing thing for the Kingdom Hearts team to be like, on a different console ecosystem, here is basically the first game again. But also, if you're coming from the PlayStation, coming to play this game, it's also a new story. But like, for all intents and purposes, you're playing through the first game again.
Yeah, correct.
But we'll get more into that. So for a while, that was my only experience. I loved Chain of Memories. I had a great time playing it. I thought the card mechanic was really cool. I think it works really well on the Game Boy Advance. And I guess we'll talk about later why I specified on the Game Boy Advance.
Yes.
And then, and honestly, that was like kind of where it stopped. I absorbed a little bit of Kingdom Hearts 2 the same way by osmosis. But by the time I had a PlayStation 2 or had a PlayStation 3, or I guess there was no Kingdom Hearts on PlayStation 3, right? Just the remakes.
There's no new... I don't think there was a new entry
until 4, the PS4 Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, correct.
But yeah, so then for a while, I didn't play any of the Kingdom Hearts games until mid college. So let's say 2015, maybe late college. And I played through one. I guess I had the 1.5 HD remix or whatever. So I played through one Chain of Memories. I don't know why I played through the whole thing again. It was
impressive.
Again, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
And then the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2, but I never got past that opening chunk of Kingdom Hearts 2. And I think it was just because I was playing it with my girlfriend at the time, and I think we just burned out on it.
Sure.
Because we blasted through the first two in like a week or something.
That like first section of Kingdom Hearts 2 is such a tonal shift from the rest of the series up to that point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So like I can also see it being like, what are we even doing here? I was just like fighting a space boat.
Yeah.
And like we're just hanging out in summer now. What is this?
Just eating ice cream.
Yeah. And like I was having a good time with it, but my girlfriend at the time was not like a gamer. And so like when we weren't doing like the Disney, like going to different planets and stuff, she's a Disney person, but not a like video game person. So she was like, I'm uninterested in this entire story. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And so yeah, I guess from playing it at the time, like I got a new appreciation for like the actual story of Kingdom Hearts, but you know, it's an appreciation, but not really an understanding. Which I feel like kind of, you know, for me at least is kind of par of the course. Like I love really complicated stories that are complicated for no reason. With a lot of
Metal Gear Solid.
I like Metal Gear Solid, and the first one I played was 4, which just
right to the deep end.
Yeah, it's like let's just go into like the culmination of the entire series, and you know, here's all the references and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get any of this. So I had a great time with Kingdom Hearts, and I think that's it. I didn't play any of the DS ones. I didn't like that's really, as a whole, this series is kind of a blind spot for me. But I did. Chain of Memories was for a while like one of my favorite Game Boy Advance games. If it might still be like in my top 5 or top 3 even of like games that I had the best time playing on the Game Boy Advance, up there with Metroid Fusion.
Another good Game Boy Advance
really good Game Boy Advance game.
Did this series land emotionally for you at all?
No, not at the time. I was not, even in college, I was not consuming media in the way that I was like, what are the themes here? And like, what is, you know, like I just was not at that stage in my brain development yet.
Yeah. I don't think I was either when I played the first one, because I was like 10 or whatever.
Sure.
But I think something we were finding in the discussion of the first Kingdom Hearts was that the game asks you to feel a lot more often than it asks you to think. And like when you can shift that, it is very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because the game gets real like confusing. Not necessarily the first one. The first one's actually pretty concise, but the series does. And I think it works when you kind of try and not look at it too hard.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, regardless, like I feel like for me at least, and some of the folks who I talk to have played these games, some of them like are pretty emotionally resonant in a way that isn't specifically tied to like a theme that they can put their finger on or like a plot point or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I feel like even with like thinking about Chain of Memories specifically, like when I got to the end of that game the first time, and to be clear, I only technically played half that game the first time I played it on my Game Boy Advance, I guess. At the end of that game, I was like, at the end of that game, and then watching some people start Kingdom Hearts 2 and like figuring out what that story was through my friends, I was like, Chain of Memories didn't matter. Like there are events later in Chain of Memories that could be seen as making the whole game inconsequential, but I really don't think it is, especially if we're talking about it from like a vibes and emotional like stakes standpoint. I think there's a lot that is in this game that propels you through, you know, the rest of the series.
Yeah, it feels pretty necessary to understand a lot of what's happening in 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll piggyback real quick and say that I did play this on the GBA when it came out, and even still, I was like lost upon starting 2.
Yeah.
I think I got through Sora's half of the game when I was younger, and then I don't know if I just didn't know to continue playing it or something, but there's more after you beat the Sora half of the game.
Yeah. My experience with that was kind of still how I approach games now as a 30-year-old person of like, well, I've already played it once. Why would I play it again?
Yeah.
And it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what the second part was. They really should have sold it as a continuation and not just like a now play it like this, which is the impression I got.
Exactly.
It's like dramatically important for one of the characters.
There's an entire character in that like second part of the story that I didn't even know existed. That's like the first new Kingdom Hearts information that has entered my brain in like a decade.
Oh yeah, I suspect I know who you're talking about, because if you didn't get super far in Kingdom Hearts 2, then that person would be like, wait, who the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly what my reaction was, but we'll talk about it.
I liked this game a lot when I was a kid. I think I was reluctant about the card battling of it all at the time.
Yeah.
That was like, this came out in 2004, and like that's just so core, like head empty, want to shoot the bad guy era.
It's just
of me
such a
playing
strange
video games.
thing for you to say, Chase. You weren't into the card battling aspect of the game. What a different child you were.
Yeah.
It's true, but at the same time, like two things exist, because I didn't like this, but I really did love Mega Man Battle Network, which is also kind of a card battling
adjacent.
game.
Sure.
Adjacent. Yeah. I think that one had enough like active things happening that it allowed me to enjoy it. But I did enjoy this game. It just wasn't like something where I was like, oh, I would hold this up as like the best Game Boy games. I think I also just simply wasn't paying enough attention in the video game.
Sure.
Like at a certain point I was like, oh yeah, it's just a retelling of the first one. I'll just fly through these cutscenes.
Yes.
And then if you do like
same stuff,
some of it is very confusing if you do that. And then obviously play the rest of the series. And then I hadn't played Chain of Memories until last year, and then did that, and also have feelings about that version of the game.
Yeah.
But we can get there. David, when did you play this?
I played this for the first time just now. Just recently.
Wow, cool.
I did not play this on the GBA as a kid. I always, when I was younger, looked at those mobile Kingdom Hearts games with suspicion.
Totally.
Because I always wanted it just to be the big main experience on the consoles. And so I largely ignored them, especially, same reason I was not a deck building kid back in the day. So it's like, I don't want to, why would I want to fight with cards when I can just replay Kingdom Hearts 1 on my PlayStation 2? So I did not play it. I knew friends who played it and loved it, but it's just not where I went as far as my gaming interests for the Game Boy Advance were concerned.
Yeah. And you played Chain of Memories this time, right?
I played Chain of Memories first and then switched to Chain of Memories.
Got you. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the wise decision.
It was a necessary change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. All right. Why don't we get into the discussion of this video game?
I would
Absolutely.
love to do that.
So, just to level set a little bit, I'd love to talk about just the high level stats about this game, some hot stats, if you will. So this game, the original Chain of Memories, the GBA one, it came out for Game Boy Advance December 7th of 2004 in North America. There was a little bit of a lead time in Japan, and then it came out a little bit later in Europe and Australia. But within a couple of months of each other. This is made by Square Enix, like the rest of the series are. But it's also made in conjunction with this company called Jupiter. Jupiter is a game series that, if you look at their discography, I guess for lack of a better phrase, they're mostly a Picross game developer. They make a shitload of Picross games.
Okay.
Especially for Switch. They have 10 games out that's just Picross 1, Picross 2. But every now and then they do a game with Square Enix where they co-develop something. One of them was this game, and the other, there was 3. I didn't even recognize the third one, but the second one was The World Ends With You.
Right.
Which does show up in another Kingdom Hearts game. But then also I think you can feel the connection between this game and that game if you hold them up next to each other. The sort of usage of abilities and cards and shit like that feels very similar to this game. And so I think you can see the DNA between those two.
Yeah.
A lot of folks who worked on one and would work on the rest of the series are here. Tetsuya Nomura, obviously, the producer and I think designer of some of the character designs and just the overall game is here. He worked on a bunch of shit. We talk about him constantly. And he's the dude who puts belts on a lot of things.
Yes.
He's
The belt aesthetic guy.
Yeah, it's cool. There's also Yoko Shimomura, who made the music on this game and like a lot of other games. I think notably
The GOAT.
Super Mario RPG, which is like, oh my God, just like hit after hit on that soundtrack. A lot of the Mario and Luigi games, Radiant Historia, the Xenoblade Chronicles game, Parasite Eve. That's a good one. And of course, Tobal #1, which
Oh, wow.
David, I don't remember if we covered #1 or #2, but
Ooh, I cannot remember.
me neither. But we covered one of those.
We did a Tobal.
Yes, we tobled. There's also Daisaku Watanabe. He wrote a lot of the games that I would consider like the angsty period of Square Enix's game history. He wrote Final Fantasy X, most of the Kingdom Hearts games, Final Fantasy 12, and also Final Fantasy 13. And so there's a lot of like teens and feelings going on in those games.
Yeah.
Do teens have
that's
feelings?
that's sort of the background on this game. I think the only other thing worth mentioning here at the top is just that like this game was announced alongside the announcement of Kingdom Hearts 2. Like in 2003, they were like, "Hey, both of these games are coming."
Whoa.
There was obviously a delay between when they actually released, but they just said like, "Here's one Kingdom Hearts game and here's a full other one too," which feels bizarre in modern game marketing.
Yeah.
Like I
And
feel
modern
like,
understanding of Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
yes, yeah. It's a lot. Anyway, why don't we talk about like what this game like actually is and like what happens in it?
Sure.
Do either of you want to explain like what the mechanics of this thing are, like how to actually play this video game?
I can give it a shot.
Yeah, David, go for it. As a fresh Chain of Memories player.
As a newbie.
I want to know your impressions of these mechanics.
So the game plays very differently than a traditional Kingdom Hearts game. It is not a 3D action RPG. It is mostly, it's an isometric view. You're going around different worlds, and it has different squares of worlds that you can that you go through different doors into different areas. But you do have to get different cards to get and access different areas. So depending on what cards you have the choice to choose to make a room appear where you're going through, like a Moogle room or a room with like a specific layout or items in it, right? So there is almost like a Hades-esque, roguelike-esque strategy to it when you're going through. Yeah, but also getting into other rooms, you have to find specific numbered cards throughout the world. So whenever you defeat an enemy in an encounter, and when you do encounters, it's kind of like the new Pokemon games where there's like a little character running around like a little heart does, and you can hit them and then it goes into a battle scene, which is different. When you beat the encounter, you get a card that has a number on it that can then, and a color as well, that can then get you into a different specific rooms depending on what that door that leads to that room requires. It's all very Kingdom Hearts, right? It's all about doors and
hearts
and whatnot, right? And then battling itself, it is based with cards, but it's more that you are not like you are battling decks, but you are not battling with the cards themselves, but you are at the same time. It's very strange. So you use cards to make attacks. So you can chain up to 3 attacks in a row. So you can have like 3 Kingdom Key attack, and then they will string together to make one longer combo that will hit an enemy. And you essentially can load them into a queue and then press the attack button, and they all go at once. And there's Sora, who's on the screen, who's going around as a little sprite attacking these characters, the other Heartless characters. There's all sorts of intricacies that go into that. There's different numbers on each of the different cards that you can put into your deck that will determine whether or not that attack will land, because the enemies can also attack you with a higher number card, and if it's higher, then your card breaks and you can't use it again for that battle, which is a bummer, especially with the bosses. So there is quite a bit of strategy when you are making your actual deck, of knowing like not just where certain cards are, but putting them in an order that works for you and kind of who you're going to be fighting. So yeah, there's attack cards, there are magic cards, there are recovery potion cards that increase or bring back all your cards that you'd used previously from that deck that go away after you use them. And then if you use all of your cards, you have to like stand still and then recharge your deck, and they all come back. But each time you do that, it takes longer. So yeah, it's a very complex system if the amount of words I've just said doesn't give that away. There's a lot going on with the intricacies of this combat system, and that's really much just I'm just giving you the surface knowledge of it.
There's a lot in there. Yeah,
there's a lot in there.
It goes a lot deeper.
Yeah. I'd say that's the basics.
Yeah. I think at a high level, the game has tied one single attack to a card.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you want to just do a regular attack, you have your Keyblade cards and magic and all that shit. And then like you were saying, if you like tie them together as this like trio of cards, you can do bigger stuff. And sometimes those add up to combos of certain things.
Yeah. You can unlock combos of like, if you get a 7, 8, 9 card next to each other, then you'll do a different special attack, stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. The slights.
Yes. Yeah. I think the only other thing worth mentioning, like mechanically there, is that all these cards have a certain priority based on what like number they have. And so like if you attack just with one single card that has like a number 2 on it, and a different enemy like makes their attack and they also use a card with like a 5 on it, then it totally interrupts whatever you are doing. And so you can sometimes use that to your advantage, because if you chain those 3 together, that like total number goes up, right? It's the sum of all those 3 cards.
Which so hard to explain.
It is kind of hard to explain. Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
And there are also just like your companion cards will just like show up randomly and you can collect them, but then they go in the back of your deck. So you have to make sure that you cycle back if you want to summon Donald or something.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty wild. I don't know that I've seen another game do this again.
I can't think of one.
Yeah, I have no idea. I could see there maybe being some like game on itch.io or something that is inspired by this, but I definitely nothing mainstream I have seen do this.
Yeah. It's it is a pretty complex system, and like at a certain point, I think the reason that this exists, it's definitely in part because the first Kingdom Hearts was like this. I think when you see what The World Ends With You goes on to do, you see where they refined it, and they're like, okay, we're not tied down to what it feels like to play Kingdom Hearts 1. So like, what can we do with that instead?
Yeah. It definitely feels like a product of the limitations of the system they were making it for.
Yes. Weirdly though, something that I felt while I was playing it is that they really got the feel of these characters just like down though.
Yeah.
Like the time it takes to swing the Keyblade, Sora's jump, like all that shit, like it feels just totally spot on, which is hard to do, I would imagine. The same reason that like Sora being put in Smash and it feeling good is like, God, how did they manage to do that?
Right.
Just because so many of the Game Boy Advance games were more often than not at the time, like sort of lesser versions. If they're on both consoles, it's like, well, this one's going to be worse.
Right.
Because it's not the same game at all, right? Like Tony Hawk Pro Skater on Game Boy Advance is like not as good as any of the other ones.
Yeah.
But I think this one like is, and partially because it is doing different shit than the mainline one was.
It's so interesting that these mechanics are what the game ended up being, because I feel like so easily they could have just made this actually Kingdom Hearts Final Fantasy. Like they could have just made this a turn-based RPG.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to. I guess they wanted to make it feel like Kingdom Hearts, which is it's just so cool that they made a Kingdom Hearts game and not they didn't compromise at all, really. I mean they did, but like through those compromises they still made it feel like you said, Chase, they made it feel like what it feels like to play Kingdom Hearts on your PlayStation.
Yeah, they added all of this complexity to it because they wanted you to be able to cast magic, to do cures, to do the slights and like the cool things that you can do athletically as Sora. And if you did it just as a turn-based RPG, it wouldn't feel like Kingdom Hearts. But if you did it as just like a hack and slash, there's just not enough buttons on the Game Boy Advance to make that feel good. So you do have to just kind of slow it down a little bit. And I think the having to cycle through your cards and think about what combos you're going to be doing necessitates slowing down, right? You can't just be throwing out attacks like crazy like you do in a regular Kingdom Hearts game, but it gives you, that same feel, but just a little slower, like I guess when it comes to what actually is going on the screen. But internally, I was always like a mile a minute in my mind thinking about what I was going to be doing and how I was positioning myself as well. So a little bit more strategic in that way too, which was interesting.
I think there was like a feeling at the time, I don't know how widespread this was, and I have to assume like not everybody had this opinion, clearly, because humans are different people.
What?
But like, I feel like there was a push among games at the time to be less turn-based. Like turn-based was like something that used to happen because like, oh, that's old school game design. We don't do that anymore. Especially with like Kingdom Hearts, because that was one of the first like Square Enix games that was like very intentionally being like, this is very much an action game. We're still doing RPG stuff, but like the combat is exceptionally active. Whereas like what the mainline Final Fantasy games up to that point were not, right?
Yeah.
And so I could see how they would see going to a turn-based system as a step backwards in a way. Playing it now, I would have eaten that up. If like they had a turn-based Kingdom Hearts, I would love that. But this system is also very strange, and it does feel kind of like an artifact of them being like, well, we can't do turn-based, but we still want it to feel like a Kingdom Hearts game, so what are we going to do? We've sort of alluded to this already, but I think that does work on the Game Boy Advanced.
Yes.
It feels really weird in Rechain of Memories.
Yeah.
It feels wrong almost. It's like, just give me regular Kingdom Hearts at this point.
Why aren't I just playing Kingdom
You're right
Hearts?
there.
Yeah.
It's
because
so
I think having you operate in 3 dimensions and move in the way that you do, and essentially just using the Kingdom Hearts, it feels like the same engine as like the remake of Kingdom Hearts 1 was in. But it has this like card battler on top of it, and so it sort of feels like it gets the worst of both worlds. Where there is a good version of the Kingdom Hearts 1 combat under there, but it has this card thing layered on top of it that also doesn't really work super well in the 3D space.
It does not work well in 3D. Being able to see the whole battlefield on the Game Boy Advance, I think, is so crucial to like having the time and the ability to queue up cards and have that little bit of strategic thought. Whereas in the one on PlayStation, like there's someone behind you, all of a sudden you didn't realize they were there, and now you're just in a bad position, and you really have to worry about not just the 2D space but the 3D space you're positioning yourself in to make these attacks effective. Whereas it just works so much easier on the 3D space if you just hit square to attack, right?
It's so funny to think that they were able to take Kingdom Hearts and put it onto a smaller console, but then they couldn't do that in reverse. For Rechain, right? It just doesn't work, which I think also attests to like how good or how well designed the Game Boy Advance one is like it's designed for that system, for the specific limitations of the Game Boy Advance, and it just does, like if you try to basically just up-res it, it doesn't feel good. It's like it's just it's a game made for a different system. It's like, why am I doing this?
It is sort of a bummer because I played both and was sort of comparing. I didn't beat Rechain, but I was comparing like how does this game compare? And I really love that they did the like full cutscene voiceover everything in Rechain.
That was great.
Yeah.
It's really good, and like it doesn't feel like a half measure there. It feels like, oh no, we're gonna go and do the whole game.
Yeah.
Not just like, okay, here's a couple of scenes. It's like, no, everything that's voiced is mostly there. Or like the big moments, right? And so it's sort of a bummer because like I get more out of watching or like experiencing the cutscenes in Rechain of Memories. But that's like definitely the inferior way to play the game mechanically.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I don't know that there's like a perfect version of this game to play.
Yeah.
I think like if you want to actually play the video game part of the video game, like the GBA one is going to be your friend because that's the one that feels mechanically like everything has been considered. This isn't like some kind of strange port of one thing to another, which I guess it kind of is, but still it feels singular and good.
Yeah.
But you're just reading through text. And so sometimes, it's still pretty good and like total tangent, but like looks amazing. The pixel art in this game is crazy.
So good.
So good. Like for no reason.
GBA does great pixel art.
The GBA does amazing pixel art and they like just nailed it. Like the visual style of what these characters would look like as pixel versions of themselves. It looks amazing. So it's not like you're suffering for like, oh God, I have to play this like horrible looking PS1 version of it. It's like, no, it's still really good. It just looks different.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the like high fidelity cutscene stuff.
No. And I would say that when you're looking at which one to play, the cutscenes in the GBA one, I think are much more, they're good for GBA, right? They're not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Whereas the combat in the PS2, the Rechain version is rough. Is rough.
Yeah.
So it's the lesser of two evils there. And I would say the the cutscenes in the GBA are not even evil. They're just different. They are made for that console. It's just not going to be high fidelity voice acting and everything like that. And I find that kind of charming and endearing in a way. It's a very nostalgic way of imparting story.
These highfalutin gamers these days need people to read lines to them. Jeez. Can't read your own lines?
I unfortunately do. I so much prefer when games read me the lines.
I do know that about you, Chase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chase needs to bring out the glasses.
That is also
the
true.
readers all the way down on the base of his nose, tip of his nose. One thing that I think is really interesting about the PS2 version is that, like, in the GBA Chain of Memories, the cards being there just feels like, okay, this is what they had to do to get this to work, and like it's fun on the GBA, whatever. But when you put it on the PS2 engine and you like have like fully 3D rendered characters holding cards in their hand, it weirdly canonizes them in a different in like a way that's like, oh, the cards are like actually real in this world and they like matter.
Yeah.
And it's not
just
a
metaphor.
It's not
or
a representation of like attacks. It's like you actually need these cards to remember how to swing your keyblade or something. It's just like such an interesting, I mean, it's extremely Kingdom Hearts, right? To just be like, it's just so funny.
Why cards? We're not going to say, but it's cards.
No, they just are cards. Yeah. And we are going to throw them at somebody across the room and they are going to catch them one-handed 50 times throughout the entire
It's going to be really cool too.
It's going to be sick every time.
Nomura did have something to say about the cards, like thematically.
Did he want belts first?
Yeah, he should have gotten
your key belts.
Your key belts, just a deck of belts.
This is your belt to remember Agrabah.
Oh man.
He did this interview. I think it's with the site Kingdom Hearts Insider, or at least that's where I saw the information posted.
Sure.
This article with an interview with Nomura where they were talking about like why cards. And I don't know if it answers it directly, but he does say a weird or interesting thing about it. He says, when I think of making a game system, I refer myself back to the one I created for FF5, so Final Fantasy V in that case. In the latter, there were loads of abilities, but only the possibility of equipping 3 at a time at the most. Learning them all does not mean you are powerful. Therefore, to be efficient, you need to sacrifice some things. He goes on to sort of say that, like, to move forward, you have to like let things go in a way.
It's the thesis of
which
the game,
is like very tied to the like themes and the story of the game.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's interesting that they chose to do cards because like discarding and using them is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And that is like, again, that's just at the core of the video game.
Nomura, you sneaky man.
You sneaky.
It's nuts.
You put your theme into my deck building?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's wild. They definitely consider a lot of the stuff in there, which is
That's so cool.
not surprising, but it is cool to see.
Yeah.
All of this in that same interview too. Tetsuya Nomura had mentioned like, I really want a lore reason for why when you boot up Kingdom Hearts 2, for Sora to be weak again, like for him to be level 1 and to have forgotten all the spells.
I don't have my cards.
Well, it's like, yeah, there's a lore reason which we'll get into, but like it's wild that is the reason that this game exists in a certain sense. Is like, I need a reason to reset them to 1 because otherwise everybody's going to hate it. Nobody's going to accept that at all. A thing that regularly happens in other video games.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
We're going to put it on a different system and it's going to be a totally different type of game, but you will have to play it for the second one to make any sense.
He had said,
I'm so confused.
So wild.
He had said that he initially didn't want to make one for the Game Boy Advanced. Like he's like, I'm not really into that, but he had said, oh, I heard kids wanted to play Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
So I gotta make one for the GBA.
Oh, it was the kid system, huh?
Yeah, apparently. I think that's probably true at the time. Like, I think there was still that like lingering sense that like the PS2 was for like adults, you know, like this was an adult's console now, or at least like late teenagers. And GBA was for children. Again, very bizarre to see that in hindsight because it's just like, it's for everybody. Everybody can play these.
Yeah,
Both
and how are you going to
games
say this
have
is for
Goofy in them.
children? Yeah, both
Games
have
have
Goofy.
Goofy. That is true.
And this game is like way more complex mechanically than
Oh my God.
this like a baby genius if you're marketing this game to a child, right?
Not only that, he mentioned in that same interview, I wanted to communicate a lighter tone in this one than I did in the first one. And I'm like, what?
No.
Oh, man, this is one of the darkest video games I have played.
It's so dark.
The shit that goes on in
Sad.
here is nuts.
And there's betrayal. There's like people backstabbing each other all over the place.
It's crazy.
The thesis of the game is you have to let go of your past in order to move on to the future.
Yeah.
Like, that's so fucked, dude. Like, what are you talking? Like,
These kids
what?
gotta learn.
These kids gotta learn. You gotta give up 3rd grade if you're going to 4th grade, dude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Forget addition.
Oh my God.
Yes, forget everything you learned in 3rd grade. It's time to go to 4th.
So we've been fairly spoiler free up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it wouldn't hurt to sort of like walk through what happens in this game because there are like pretty wild beats and we can pause and talk about them while we go through it. So for anybody who is maybe going to play this game and doesn't want spoilers, here is your jumping off point because it will get progressively more spoilery as the story does when you talk about it.
Yeah, the rap that Sora, Riku, and Kairi made from Kingdom Hearts 1 is right here for you. You can get off.
Nice.
You're good.
Yes. But let's talk about the story, shall we?
Let's
do it.
Okay, so the setup of this game is that Goofy, Donald, and Sora, the main squeezes, have somehow arrived in front of this place called Castle Oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's not a lot of clues as to why they're there.
They were following Pluto. Pluto had a message, a letter from the king, and this is where they ended up.
Yes, the ended up is the
it's just
the wild
down
part
a
here.
path, and then they
went down a path, and then it's like staircases to a creepy castle in the sky. All right,
let's go.
And I think that they think that like there's somebody in there, like maybe the king, King Mickey, of course, for anybody not in the know. And so they're like, all right, let's get up in there. And so they do. And I don't know if it's immediate, but somebody in the, like, if you've played any of the other games, the Organization 13 hood shows up.
Black robes.
And they're like, hey, everything you want is in this castle, but there was a quote.
Such riddles they talked in.
Yeah.
They talked in a lot of riddles, yeah. It was like, essentially to move forward is to forget or to leave behind or something like that in this castle. Essentially referring to the fact that, like, you will change as you move through this place. They don't exactly explain what that means, but like you will not be the same at the top of this as you were at the bottom.
Yeah.
I think all of them are like, yeah, whatever. We still need to like find our friends. Again, sort of referring back, at least in Sora's case, to the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, where he's like, I'm gonna find you, Kairi. Like I will reach out and get to you one way or another, which was like a gut punch at the end of the first one. And so at least like at the time I was like, dude, I gotta find Kairi.
Yeah. Chase left his house right then. So go look for Kairi.
Gotta find Kairi.
I will find her. I'll do it personally. So anyway, that like same mysterious person throws you your first card, which I think is, what is it? Traverse Town?
Yeah.
Is that the first place you go?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you have to like relive your memories or something like that. Something to the effect of like, you have to re-experience these places. And so you do that. And if I remember correctly, at least it might not be the first one, but eventually like the characters do not recognize you in these places. Like you run into people that have been in all of these locations and they're like, we don't know who you are, but they also make reference. Like sometimes somebody will just say your name before being introduced and they're like, wait, I don't know you. How do I know that? Which again, it's explained away in the moment of like, it's very Kingdom Heartsy, right? Like your heart knows the truth or whatever. So yeah, you go through Traverse Town, come out the other side. And I feel like this is sort of the point where like the main thrust of the game begins, where the main members of the party start to make reference to the fact that they like are having a hard time remembering things. Like Donald and Goofy are like, what was that place where Sora got turned into a Heartless before, like hollow something.
Yeah.
And like they can't quite reach it. And Sora himself is also like, oh, it was and like can't get it. You just can't pull it together, which is like wild. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But I think as a viewer, you were supposed to intuit like moving through these places is discarding Sora's memories as he does that. It's pretty small at first, but eventually it gets like much more significant in the kinds of things he's forgetting.
Yeah. The people.
How did this like part of the game land for y'all?
This time, I guess, am I talking about my first experience? Because like this time, I knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, like I said, I hadn't played the first Kingdom Hearts, so I was like so confused on so many levels. And so when I first played it, I was like, yeah, sure, I'm forgetting stuff. I get it. I get what's happening. I think that's kind of interesting, but like I also have no emotional connection to these characters. But playing it, I think it's like a really, I think, cool pitch for a game, or like for a story. So I was like, I was having a great time. I do think the like your heart always knows, or like your heart remembers stuff is like, okay, sure, whatever, I guess. But like technically these people are also made from your memories. So it's like, do they have heart? Opens a whole can of worms of like, what are these people?
Yeah. Squall remembers you in Kingdom Hearts 2.
Right.
It's not like he actually experienced forgetting who Sora was.
Right. It's such an odd thing. But yeah, I think that's the baseline. It's just like, it's a cool pitch for the story. And I was excited to play more of it.
I thought it was interesting. It's hard to see it as super unique, or not unique, but as a desired thing to have the characters go through from a narrative standpoint, as opposed to not having to think up new levels and then having them feel fresh for the characters as well, and not just being like rehashes sometimes. But like when you talked about what Nomura said about wanting to kind of reset the character to 0 again, that does make more sense. But I'm wondering like where it feels like they kind of met in the middle of, okay, we don't want to have to completely make all these new levels and like get a licensing agreement from Disney for all these new levels that we want to do. So how do we make it feel fresh again for the players and for the characters in the game? And it's like, okay, we're just going to have them forget that they did these things before and have them experience it again, which I do think works, and I think is a fair way to go about making a portable version of a large game on a 3D console. Yeah. And I do think it lands decently well for me, looking at it with my adult eyes, whereas the two of you both saw it with your child eyes first. So I think it's a different experience. So I can kind of see business rationale behind why they did this, but I do think that it works, and it does make it interesting to see what they are choosing for them to forget, how quickly, and like where and how that is going to resolve was an interesting question to me, because, you know, having played the second one, I know he gets them all back, but how is the process of doing that? What are the emotions and the feelings and the hearts that are involved in that process was the real driver for me to see how this all kind of ended up.
I think like I'll show my hand on my read on this one pretty early, but like up front, my experience with like Alzheimer's and the way that my grandparents and my mom have it, like informs my read on this game so much. Because like I totally see the like business decision of like, I don't know if we can go get like Mulan for this one.
Gotta have something fresh for number 2.
Yes, correct.
Can't do Toy Story yet.
I will say the depictions of memory loss are like wildly accurate in a way that I was not expecting them to be. And especially the progression of it, where like initially it's like, what was the name of that place that we went to? I just can't remember it. I remember we went there, but like, and like the events, the big things that happened there, but like, was it Hollow something? Going from that to eventually like, you know, I don't remember what happened at this point, or like totally replacing eventually people, right? Like being like, I don't know who that is. That stuff was like, holy shit, man, somebody must have had experiences with somebody who had memory loss, just because like the depictions of it sometimes are so inaccurate, right?
Yeah.
I saw, I think it's American Fiction, the movie that came out in the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, there's a depiction of one of like the moms with Alzheimer's. And like, I was watching it with my wife and she's like, are you okay? Like, this seems kind of heavy. And I'm like, it's actually fine. Like the depiction of it feels totally not real to the point where it's like not hitting me in the way where I expect it to, right?
Sure.
Like if you just said it on paper, I'd be like, I don't know, maybe that might be a little heavy, but it's just like, that's not how this works, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas this stuff is way more accurate. And especially the frustration that the characters have and with each other sometimes, like they oftentimes get mad at each other about not remembering. Like, dude, what the fuck? That was such a big deal. Or like, oh, I wouldn't forget it. It's so important to me. And then they'll like ask each other like, okay, what was it? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That stuff all just feels like super accurate. So just to set that up now, because that's pretty much the whole experience of Sora's half of this story is me thinking and feeling that part of it, except when it comes to the sort of like magic wizardry and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then he casts Firaga.
Yeah. So I don't know that we necessarily need to go through each of the Disney levels because they are very much the same
Pretty
thing.
inconsequential. We can mention like what levels there are, I guess.
It's the same ones from the first game.
Yeah.
It's those.
And basically the thrusts of the villain are kind of, they're not the same, but they're like even less consequential.
Yes,
a lot of them are just like, I'm being evil this time. It's like, okay, cool.
I just like that it's the undertone is that it's Sora's memories of these people of just being just totally just not interesting villains at all. I'm just evil and bad and gonna try to do some bad things. That's it.
So he doesn't remember the connection to the Heartless. He's just like, they were bad guys doing bad stuff and I had to beat them up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
That's it.
So
well, I don't think he probably sees their connection to the Heartless because those are cutscenes that I think just the player sees in the game.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh,
so it's just getting Sora's interpretation of all these characters. So it makes sense that he's just like, what is with all these assholes I am running into?
I don't know. Oogie Boogie sucks. I don't get it.
Oogie Boogie in this game, when he was just moving around, when he was like feeling bad, that was some comedy. I thought he's just like, he was just so animated.
Yeah, the character animations for him specifically, he's like really swinging his hands when he's
really
going back
moving.
and forth.
He's really moving.
Let's see. So point being, I don't know if we need to focus on the Disney stuff. Like it's kind of the same. And I will say, having played last year when I played through this, or the Rechain of Memories, I should say, going from 1 directly into this game was like kind of a slog because I was like, dude, I just played these levels.
Yeah.
Like not very long ago.
I got lost in Wonderland the same way as I did in
same
number
experience.
1. Same deal. Always my nightmare level.
And so it's like, it's almost more fun to play the GBA one because it is such a departure even visually. Whereas this one is like, I was just in Agrabah, man. I was just under the sea.
Yeah.
I was just here.
So anyway, I think as the story goes on, you eventually start getting introduced to a little bit more of like what the actual plot is, like what's happening here. And they introduce a few characters. All of them have wild bananas names.
Yeah.
I love these names.
They're extremely funny and extremely Kingdom Hearts. So one of them is Larxene, I think is Larxene. Larxene. She is, they don't make reference to it initially, but they start referencing a thing called Organization 13.
Yeah.
But they really do not explain what that is.
It's called the organization first, then Organization 13.
Yes. Correct. She is one of them. A person named Axel is one of them who like just chef's kiss for my boy Axel.
Big Axel fan.
I love Axel. He's just the best. I think especially because he is voiced by Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 2 in the like full version.
That's I was like this. I mean,
cool.
I thought it sounded familiar, but it's like, oh, I've heard this. I've played Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories before. I didn't even fucking realize. That's so good.
He's just like, every scene he's in, I am compelled by his character.
He's interesting.
He's like a very red-haired, spiky fella who has like circle blades with spikes on the end of them that he holds sort of in the middle, which are very good.
Pokey hula hoop.
Whereas I think a lot of the other characters in this game.
I'm just imagining him now in the middle of your college campus on like the big green, just like doing hula hoop tricks.
Hell yeah. That's true.
Flames and spikes on the hula hoops.
Yeah. Oh my God.
In another world.
Metal.
Jesus.
And there's also this character named Vexen who shows up too. The game sort of in these cutscenes like positions the three of them as like, there is weird sorts of
tension.
tension and like who is loyal and who is not is a thing that is constantly being thrown around between the three of them. And I think you're not supposed to know exactly who's on what side in the beginning of this game, but they all sort of like they're talking to each other, and they also make mention of this character named Namine, and you see her every now and then too in these cutscenes. It'll just like take, you know, a flash to this like blonde haired younger girl who is drawing on this little pad. And a lot of the time she's drawing like Sora or Kairi or Riku or anything like that.
Or like a town, like one of the locations you go to.
Yes. And it typically proceeds whenever you go there too, I think. And so they're setting up this connection between like, this is a character who is somehow tied to what is happening in the game at some point. And it's like, all of these bigger plot beats essentially happen between each of the worlds that you go to, the Disney worlds. You'll like show up in these nondescript white castle hallways.
Little lobbies for each floor.
Lobbies, yeah. And some story will happen to you. So essentially like, and again, another reason why it felt kind of like a slog was like, I just want to get to these parts. These are the interesting things to me.
Yeah. The Disney stuff was just filler.
Yeah, I think that's why as a kid I like was so clocked out of the story, is because like the Disney stuff in this game does not matter, because it's not even rehashing the story of what happened in the first one. It's just rehashing the level, and then the story is just like, oh, fight the guy.
Inconsequential.
Yeah, and then the real story stuff happens every like 45 minutes. You get like a 2-minute all text cutscene, and then it's like, all right, here's Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like, okay, well,
yeah, right.
One of the beats that happens at this point too is that Larxene, all of the members of the organization start like showing up and fighting Sora.
Yes.
Everybody wants a piece.
Everybody wants a piece. And it seems like, at least my read this time was that they're trying to get him to go farther into the castle so that they can like fully wipe his memory. I think with the intention of using him as like an asset for the organization. They're like, he's like this kick-ass dude. They also mentioned that like, he's one of 2 people to ever become a Heartless and like return to his normal form after that.
Just him and that man.
Yes, that man who like it's Ansem, but like you don't know that at this point.
Do they in this half of the game, do they call him the superior or whatever, or is that just the second half?
I think that there is some mention of it. It might not be right at the beginning, but yeah, you're right that they start mentioning that their leader is like this kind of big, gigantic, outsized figure, not physically, but just like stands above the rest of them. We'll get to the nobody of it all in a second here, but so at some point Larxene shows up. She beats up, or like you fight her as Sora. And something that she does is like they kind of collide, and she replaces the charm that Kairi gave Sora in the first game with one that Namine made, this character that they've been kind of alluding to. And it's this like star shape essentially. And it's in that moment that Sora's like, oh yeah, I remember the person who I've been trying to remember this whole time. It's like he's mostly been forgetting shit, but he's been hanging on to the fact that like there was this other girl who he grew up with on my island and I can't remember her name. And it's in that moment he's like, oh, it's like Namine, I remember her. And he gets very defensive when Larxene says like, oh, you just found that charm. Like, why do you even want it? He's like, no, dude, it's mine. She gave this to me.
Yeah.
Again, sort of like tying him to her at that point.
She gave it to me, and I made a promise to never, or to always protect her or something.
Yeah.
I think it was something like that.
It's immediately like the most important thing to him.
Yes.
Yeah. So then Riku appears from the first game, and he is a total shithead to Sora just immediately.
He's so sassy.
He's so sassy and so mad.
Yeah.
He's wearing the full like Hollow Bastion outfit that he had in the first one, where it's like Riku armor. Looks. Yeah. And I think in the moment you're supposed to be like, wait, I thought we were cool now. But he's very much not. You don't get an explanation for that for a little while, but the important thing to hang on to is that there's a Riku wandering around these halls and you're not sure why.
And he hates your guts.
Hates you. Totally hates you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Riku, this version of Riku also is very defensive of Namine. He's like, no, dude, I made the promise to Namine. She's the one who like made this connection with me. Like you're not real. You're an imposter. Like you're among us. Like what the whole deal is not real for him. So he's still antagonizing, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. A bunch of Disney stuff happens.
Disney nonsense.
Yeah.
Some Disney things happen. And then you make it to this level that if you've played Kingdom Hearts 2, you make it to this location. It's this like mansion that you get to and you're like outside the gates of it. Vexen shows up and Sora like promptly beats his ass. And Vexen's like, dude, this sucks. Like, I gotta go get my help. All the while, Axel has sort of been doing this like subterfuge to suggest that Vexen's not loyal.
Yeah. Axel's playing the Game of Thrones, but Axel's playing a political game in this whole game. He's doing politicking.
I do also just want to, not to like put respect on Vexen's name or anything, but there are like, you fight Vexen a couple of times, and the first time you fight him, when you kick his ass, he's like, thank you for showing me how you fight. Now I'm going to go do science. It's like, oh, this is all according to his plan. I always love a twist like that. It just makes me like, kind of give like a thumbs up. I don't know. I just like it. So I just wanted to touch on Vexen's whole deal. He is a scientist, and everything he does is for science, which is,
I think a lot of them are in the like lore.
Sorry, maybe that's a spoiler, but he's Evan, isn't he? There's like a lot of text about Evan in Kingdom Hearts 2.
I think so. Yeah. Like a lot of them, they have these
naming,
these connections to like the research that a certain person was doing in Kingdom Hearts 2. And so a lot of them are scientific in like their background, but we'll get there eventually. So anyway, this fourth member of the organization shows up named Marluxia, pink-haired fella.
Yeah.
Great name.
He seems to outrank the rest of them too. Everybody's kind of paying a little bit of deference, and he mentions like, hey, like I'm a way bigger deal than the rest of y'all. Like you shouldn't be talking to me like that. And I think sort of mutually, Axel is like tests Vexen's loyalty around Marluxia. And he's like, okay, well, like Vexen's clearly like a mole or something. We need to do away with him. And Marluxia's like, you going to do that yourself? Like, you big enough for that? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so Axel shows up to the fight between Sora and Vexen and then just promptly kills Vexen completely. Like totally offs the dude. Which, like, again, respect to Axel. He's fucking cool, man. He does it with a lot of style.
Yes. Yeah.
Chase likes it when people are killed with style.
Yeah, man.
As long as you do it with style.
Yeah. Anime style killings, like I'm into that.
Yeah, right.
I get it.
Open your sword, your katana sheath real fast, and then close it, and then a second later somebody explodes.
Yeah. Everything goes black and white, and the person just sort of like slides in half a little bit. Oh man, very good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Axel leaves. Sora continues and runs into Riku again. Again, they have the sort of like conflicting memories. Riku's being defensive of his whole thing. Sora then gets pissed off at Donald and Goofy because they're like, hey, dude, you just remembered Naminé like 10 minutes ago. Could we maybe slow down and like talk about this and figure out what's going on? He's like, dude, I have never been more sure of the fact that I need to go defend Naminé like right now. So get wrecked. And then he like runs away from Donald and Goofy, like leaving them behind. Which like, again, whenever that happens in these games, I'm like, God damn it, dude, this sucks so bad. Like in the first one where Donald and Goofy, in sort of a mirror moment, they decided to be loyal to Riku when he was able to like conjure the Keyblade. They left Sora. They're like, well, we got to, we're tasked to defend whoever the key wielder is, and you're not that anymore. Brutal. And in this case, it's sort of the mirror, right? Like Sora's like single, just so solely focused. Donald and Goofy are like, could we maybe practice a little bit of like distance from the heat of the moment? And he's like, nope, sorry. Let's see. Oh, Axel also seems to maybe be on Naminé's side. Like there's this cutscene that they have where he shows up and Naminé's like, hey, I'm doing the best I can with what's going on here. And he's like, hey, just so you know, like nobody else is here right now. If you want to like not be in this room and like leave. And she's like, oh shit. And then immediately like dips and runs out. Oh yeah. Okay. So big moment here. Sora shows up. He's now on Destiny Islands, the like very first place that you show up in Kingdom Hearts 1. And it's like sort of sad going there in a way. At least it was for me. Like it felt not great. And you have this fight and Naminé shows up. Like she like is in this place too. And he's like thrilled to see her because he's been like, I've been looking for you this whole time. Like, I can't believe we're finally reunited. And she's like, yeah, but like, is it me? Like, are you sure it's me that you're looking for? And like does this pretty weird cutscene where there's like one true nominee on one side and like kind of a like ghost nominee on the other.
Yeah.
And he, as she essentially says, like the way that this castle has been working is that through my magic, like the magic that I can use, I have been undoing the connections between your memories. And so none of them make sense anymore. And I can sort of insert my own commentary and like the things that these people want me to do, essentially. It's in that moment that Sora's like, oh, it's not you, it's Kairi.
Yeah.
Like Kairi is the person that I have been trying to find this whole time. And she's like, I have felt guilt for doing this. Like, I don't really love what this is doing to you. She also, I think this is the name drop of the game too. She's like, the chains between your memories are broken or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, cool.
Neat.
Like that.
Yeah.
She also starts making references to things like I've never existed anywhere. Like I'm like kind of a non-entity. There is a reason for that, but you don't really I don't think you get an answer to that in this game as to why she's feeling like that.
The closest you get is, I believe, Larxene calls her the shadow of Naminé. And that's as close as you get. Of Kairi, sorry. Yeah. Naminé is the shadow of Kairi.
Yeah.
Right. I think they do explain that in 2, but in this one, it's mostly just kind of a reference that they make.
Yeah. They're connected somehow.
Yes. Yeah. Her and Kairi are like similar, which I think is important because it's not just some rando that's doing this. Like, it is a person that is kind of inextricably linked with Kairi, like just the real world, but it makes sense to me why she could sort of supplant herself in Sora's mind. Yeah. Because he holds them in sort of a similar emotional space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, they sort of like leave and continue onward. And of course, Riku shows up pissed off and is like, no, dude, I'm here to protect Naminé instead. I think you fight him, but then at the end of that, Naminé screams stop. And it like has this power over Riku and he just like dies. Like he sort of collapses
he
on
turns
the ground.
off. Yeah.
Just dies.
Which like they give you an explanation afterwards why that's possible, but for the like minute where between it's kind of harrowing because
really,
like
it's like she has power to kill.
Yeah, because it's not like a ooh ouch, I'm gonna die a dramatic death. He's just out, right? Like totally gone.
Blank face, like eyes just wide open, like on the floor, limp, just absolutely horrifying.
Larxene shows up and reveals that like, so this isn't real Riku. This is what they refer to as a puppet.
Yeah.
Lies of P again.
Pinocchio rearing his head once again.
Chase also confided to me that the Pinocchio level was his least favorite level in this one.
That's true, man. I just can't stop hating on the P.
Kingdoms of H, sorry. No, sorry, Chains of M. There it is. It's right there. Kingdom Hearts Chains of M.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Kingdoms of H : Chains of M. No, that's gaming.
Yeah. For the Game Boy.
Let's see.
Sorry. Okay. Keep going.
So there's a couple things that happened here. I think you fight Larxene. It doesn't really matter all that much, but Naminé seems to like care for Sora after the fight. Like she seems to like care about him. I think just like almost parasocially because she's like been working around him for so long despite never having like met him very much. But she's like, I regret the sort of things I had to do to you. But in this moment, Sora also talks about like, hey, I know that like those memories weren't real. Like those weren't real things that happened, but I still want to keep that promise to you, even if it didn't take place in the first place, which is cool and very interesting. Like, I think there's a very like postmodern interpretation here of like a non-objective reality, right? Of like, it doesn't necessarily like your memories of something are not the important thing. It's like the feeling that you attach to. Yeah. And because the feeling was real, he's like, I still think that that's important enough. To like be good here.
Yeah. It's so funny in some ways to hear him like try and rationalize it because the way you said it, Chase, makes total sense. But the way that Sora says it is like, even if I didn't really make the promise, I really made the promise. It's like, what are you saying, man?
Yeah, he makes no sense. He's rambling. And even Donald's like, okay, that was a bit much. He comes out and says like, this guy is off the office rocker right now.
Speaking of Donald and Goofy, they do show up in this moment and fight Larxene with you, and I think she dies, which is like sort of a bummer.
She like disintegrates very dramatically.
Also, Sora does like the worst shit in this moment too. He's like talking about all the stuff about like I want to keep my promise to you. I want to like have this be real. And then she starts like being emotional and crying a little bit. And he's like, hey, stop. He said, I made a promise to not make you cry. And now if you do that, I'll feel bad. So don't do it.
And then he took out his trilby and put it on.
Yeah. Dames always be crying, don't they?
There was like some very neckbeard energy to that moment.
Yes.
Unhinged of him to say that. And for her to be like, oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
You're right. I should stop crying.
Because I think Donald and Goofy do something. I think like that makes her laugh. And he goes, there it is. That's the smile I want to see.
Ah, yeah, finally a smile for me.
You're so pretty when you smile.
That's what's great.
Oh my God.
Show me that pretty
and
lights.
Like, in a series where Sora is almost every other instance just doing the good thing and trying to be a good guy, out of nowhere, he's just like totally unemotionally intelligent and is like against seeing tears. He's like, no, don't do it.
And even
like,
the way he says it is so like emotionally detached too. He's like kind of like with like a jovial tone. He's like, hey, don't cry. I don't like it when you cry. I made a promise not to make you cry. And she's like sitting there actively sad. He's like, no, don't do that.
It's also something that like a total psychopath says.
Yes.
It's very
like
weird.
The context. If you change the context of that sentence, it gets creepy fast.
It makes me upset when you cry.
Yes. It's like, what is happening here? That was one of the weirdest scenes in the whole game because it was so tonally different than the rest of it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the series, to be honest.
Yeah.
So weird.
I feel like a lot of the time characters are totally happy to just like cry and feel whatever emotions they're having. But in this one moment, Sora's like, no, don't. I don't like it.
Yeah. I agree, and I feel like just him and Riku's Sora and Riku's possessiveness over Naminé in this game felt very strange too.
Yeah.
Weird. I guess it makes sense in the fact that their memories are being manipulated for them to feel that way. But it feels off. Yeah, tonally not quite in keeping with the rest of the series.
Yeah. I think the relationship between Riku and Sora there is like they're both trying to protect their idea of their own identity through these memories.
Sure.
Like, your story is true, then my memories aren't real. And if that's the case, who the fuck am I?
So it's more about their own sense of self. You interpreted that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even still, it's not great.
No.
Like, that's not a good reason to be like,
Nominee's my girl, bro.
Yeah.
your girl and she's my girl. Then who are we?
it's an extremely 2004 approach to like conflict between two male characters with a third female character existing too.
Not even there. The concept of her is there.
Right.
Yeah.
We're like chain of misogyny. Just cut that out. Do not put that in the podcast.
That's good.
Fuck.
That's good.
We're going to Tetsuya Nomura with that one bit.
This one thing in this game has destroyed it for everyone. Sorry, bud.
Crazy. Anyway.
Okay, so after this, there's like more cutscenes where Marluxia seems to find out about Axel letting Naminé go. And then it seems like Axel's maybe like a triple agent actually, because they've been positioning him to look like he's been trying to overthrow the organization the whole time. But Marluxia says that that's actually his plan. Marluxia's plan is to overthrow the organization. And so like Axel's actually trying to defend the corporate line in a certain way.
Yes.
He's trying to make profits for the shareholders.
He's got big Eve energy in this one, if I'm going to make a Metal Gear Solid 3 reference.
Whoa.
Yeah, you are. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just you don't know whose side he's on the whole game until like the very end.
And it's somebody who you didn't even know whose side you were worrying about.
Exactly. Was it Eva or is it Eva? It's Eva, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Eva?
Eva. Yeah, because it's Adam and Eva. Not Adam and Eve for some reason.
Gotcha.
For Hideo Kojima shaped reasons.
Yeah,
there it is.
Anyway, so Marluxia essentially shows up and is like, hey, Naminé, I'm going to need you to choose between your own survival or Sora's memories. Like, it's one or the other at this point. Sora says, fuck it, we ball, and like, just erase all my memories. I don't give a shit, just so like Naminé won't have to be hurt, right?
Yeah.
However, Puppet Riku shows back up and is like, actually, I'm chill with Sora again. We're cool now.
We got a heart now, baby.
Yeah, he says nothing about him is real, but that he wants to protect even the fake memories. Again, sort of gesturing at like the memories might not be real, but the feelings are the important part here. How it made me feel.
The interpretation of the memories is real.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Sora beats Marluxia's ass. I think he dies.
Okay.
And then.
So I said before we started recording that I have a clip that I want to play.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
The surprise clip.
It is right before they go into the room to fight Marluxia.
Okay.
There is this moment. So they're all the whole group, Naminé, Riku, Sora, Donald, Goofy. They're all standing outside the big door, looking at the big white door on the way into Marluxia's room.
Lair.
Yeah. All right, here it goes.
Okay.
He's really in there?
Yes.
I knew it. I can feel his power. It's trying to destroy my heart.
Gorge, we'll just take care of him together.
the Goofy chiming in with he's gonna destroy my heart. Gorge really fucked me up. I was listening to this in my kitchen with my like an AirPod in or whatever. And I just started I was yelling because I was so fucking it's not that wild of a moment, but it is just like, oh yeah, don't forget that like Goofy's also here.
It's Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
Goofy's here.
Goofy and Donald are here, and they
The
are
whiplash and the
invested.
juxtaposition.
Yes. There's another whiplash moment that I had later on, but I don't have a clip for that. It's just anytime a certain character showed up in the second half of the story, I lost my mind.
So, this is the chain of memories drop. It says, not remembering something doesn't really mean it's gone. One memory leads to another. Many pieces are linked together like they're in a chain that makes up each of us, which is Naminé's explanation of like, I can rearrange your memories if you want me to.
Yeah.
I'll be able to put them in the right spot, but you're going to have to like rest for a while for me to do that. And then finds this like pod that if you've played Kingdom Hearts 2, you'll recognize as like where Sora shows up in the second one. But she's like, if you want me to do that, you essentially just have to go in here and I can put them back together.
I was so confused by that when I played Kingdom Hearts 2 as a child.
Oh my God.
What is
up with
probably
this
most
pod?
people. Yeah.
I was so confused about everything with Twilight Town and the pod and Naminé and just everything going on there. But great vibes.
Very good vibes. And like, I did go on to play Kingdom Hearts 2 shortly after I played this one. And I will say it allowed me to relax in Twilight Town so much more and just enjoy what they were doing tonally there. When I was like, I know what Sora's doing. Like, I'm going to understand that plot beat when it shows up. Yeah. Because that's how you're reintroduced to Sora in Kingdom Hearts 2 is like you find him here with somebody as you're playing as someone. And that sort of like ignites the rest of the plot. But yeah, the first time I played it, I was like, dude, why? How are we here? What is the reasoning that we are here? But yeah, so that's sort of the way that the first half of this game ends, is with Naminé being like, I can put it back together. We can fix this.
I was gonna say, is it clear or ever made clear how she has her powers? It's just who she is.
I think it may just be who she is. In the same way that like each of the organization members has like a weird weapon that they have, you know, like the dude who plays like water guitar or whatever.
Sure.
I think it's just like that is the skill that Naminé has, is to be able to like rearrange people's minds.
Just a mind witch. That's just who she is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It was so interesting. Larxene calls her a witch several times.
She does.
Like, this is very specific language you're using here that feels really weird. Like, are there other witches in the game? Because Maleficent's not a witch, is she?
I don't know. I don't know if they ever call her that.
Yeah, I never call her a witch, but I think you would probably say canonically she's a witch, right? Or maybe she's more of a sorceress.
I feel like she's a sorceress for sure.
Right?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know that outside of a Disney world, if they call anybody else as specific as something like a witch.
Witch.
It reminds me of like in the first Star Wars, or the fourth one, I guess, when they called Darth Vader like a wizard or whatever, like you dark wizard. Like what the fuck? Yeah, you guys didn't have this like parlance nailed down quite yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the end of this the first bit here.
Oh, and then you hear the song.
Yeah, true. There's a simple and clean drop here, isn't there?
Yeah. There sure is.
Just that half of the game. How did it land for y'all?
I liked the ending. I liked how it tied up. I feel like the character of Naminé at first I was not quite sold on, but then just the very human response she has to Sora being like, make me the way I was, let me forget you so I can remember everything else, and how she's just like genuinely sad about that. Was tough to see. It was a very sad moment. I was like, okay, this young girl has been abused. She's done some terrible things, but was it because she wanted to do them? Maybe not. And now she seems like she maybe has a chance to have some sort of happiness, and now it's getting all dashed. Right. But will still do the right thing to give this person that she cares for what he wants. Right. So I think that I do enjoy the character of Naminé and how her story kind of concludes here, and how it very much ties back into the larger theme of Kingdom Hearts. Like, I'm going to forget you with my memories, right? Your memory is going to be gone, but you're going to be in my heart still. So it's just that it's everything is always through the lens of the heart in these games. And I think it's a nice way to transition back into the main series, where they have this kind of fun side story with memories instead of hearts as the focal point.
I definitely felt more connected to Naminé's story this time through. And I think that is my takeaway from this game, is like, this is a good story and Naminé is a good character. Like, I think where Sora ends up, I think this game for Sora helps, like we said in the very beginning, helps make sense why he's level 1 in the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. I think for Naminé, I think this is just a really good story for her character. I think it is really interesting to bring these themes of kind of like emotional and mental manipulation, of a child, I guess, is in there, but I don't think that is specifically the theme they're going for. I think it is just like manipulation is really interesting, like manipulating her kind of like loneliness and want to be included for, nefarious purposes. I think it's interesting. But then when she, meets Sora and or even before she meets Sora, she feels bad about the things she is doing. And then, like you said, David, in the end is willing to give that stuff up to do what is right for for Sora and for all involved, I guess. Just Naminé's a really good character, I think, and I like this story for her.
Sort of a bummer that she's like almost underutilized in a lot of the other games.
She's an interesting character. She's a very
and
unique, strong power.
She does, and like I feel like like her feelings about identity are pretty good and interesting. Like, she is also what the game will eventually refer to as a nobody. And like, I think the stuff that they ask around that is very interesting. I don't know if they really ever come down on it in a like super concise way, but I love the idea of somebody be like essentially longing for like, I don't know who I am really. I don't know if I can even find that's a pretty compelling story. Like, sometimes Sora's just like, I'm going to hit the bad guys and I knew exactly who the fuck I am. Like, just no problems with any of that stuff. But a lot of the nobodies, and I think Naminé specifically is interesting, where she does feel like I don't have a grasp on who I am or what makes me me. And she's not like really mad about that necessarily. It seems like everybody else in the game who is in that situation is pissed all the time, whereas she's like kind of sad, but like, I don't know what to do with this. And she could, I think that there's a really cool story in there if you kind of follow that thread. But I think you see her a little bit in 2, and then she's sort of like, all right, see ya, bye. And that's it. But yeah, I also thought this was good. Again, just like with the same sort of like memory stuff that I've encountered before, it was a cool read on this stuff. And again, once it gets to the moment where Naminé's like, I can put your memories back together, I can cure your dementia, like, that, of course, is not landing for me in the same way that the rest of it does. But like, I do think it's like a very novel and interesting way to explore this half of the story. Cool. Do we want to move on to the second half?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool. Let's do it. Welcome back to the second part of this episode.
Hey, delighted to be here. It's not been a period of time.
Calendar month.
Yes. No.
It's only been a few minutes. I've just played a little bit of the GBA soundtrack, and it's been that long. It's fine.
Yeah. We're just trying to get in character for this, or on brand, on theme for this, by trying to make more distance between when we played this game to forget what actually happened.
Our own chain of memory, if you will.
Yes.
I have noticed that definitely being a thing since like entering into my 30s is that if I just wait a while, I can pretty easily just forget something.
It really helps with spoilers. Like I will spoil myself of something on the internet. I'm just like, I'm going to forget that, set the brain off, and it's good. Yes. And I forget. It's amazing.
It's good. Everything's fine.
It's one of the best things about aging.
Yes. Like if I can avoid hyper focusing on that specific fact, yes, I'll watch the movie and be like, wow, I don't remember what the spoiler was. This is very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really good. It's Riku time now.
Let's go, baby.
In the first half, AJ, I think you had mentioned that you stopped playing the first time you played this at the Sora part.
Yeah, well, I had finished the Sora part. I don't remember if I didn't know that there was a Riku part or if I was just like a kid and like, I've already played the game once, I'm not going to play it again. But I do think it didn't feel unreasonable to me to think like it's just going to be the same game, but you get to play as Riku this time. Yes. I didn't realize it would be like an entire separate section of the story.
Yeah. I had the same experience when I was younger. I beat the game as Sora and was like, cool, done and dusted. We're good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I do wonder if there's sort of like a 2000s era understanding of games that was influencing my decision to not do it.
Sure.
And having played both of them now, like the second half is like the interesting part of the game. Yeah. At least for me. Like
it's all unique stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like we've never, even if we were revisiting all of the original places, like we were in Sora's story, we've never played as Riku before, you know? Like it's fun and exciting. It's thrilling.
Yeah, the first one felt like, how do we get Sora in a position to be able to play in the second one as a level 1 character who doesn't know very much? Mm-hmm. And then when they finished with that, they were like, all right, well, what about Riku? We got Riku still. And
He's around.
Like, he's around. And I will say, having played 2 as well, like this portion of his story is so critically important for the rest of the series. Because like he kind of comes out of nowhere in 2 and you're like, I don't know where you've been or why you've been making these decisions, but it is like so illuminated by this part of the story.
Why do you look like the main bad guy from the first game now?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Confusing.
So why don't we do the same thing that we did with the first half where we just kind of walk through like the major beats and talk about him a little bit. So in the beginning of this portion, Riku is just like sort of floating around visually. Like it's not really clear what's going on.
In the paths between worlds.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the suggestion is that because at the end of the first one, he entered into Kingdom Hearts with Mickey and like where or what happened in there is sort of like unclear. Mm-hmm. And I sort of appreciate that they don't always define exactly what the like darkness is or like the space that it is, because you can kind of just have these like ethereal moments where it's like he's just out there floating around or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, he also shows up in Castle Oblivion somehow, and he starts having a conversation initially with a disembodied voice, which like if you've played the first one and you're playing Recoded, sounds like Ansem, like it sounds like the same guy. Mm-hmm. And he eventually finds one of the cards that Sora has been using to like go between worlds in Castle Oblivion, and the first place he goes is Hollow Bastion, which is immediately a change up from the first one, because again, like the Sora's half is just walking through exactly the levels he went through in the first game, whereas this one starts with Hollow Bastion, which is just immediately like, hey, we got something else going on here. The voice like really hammers on Riku for like allowing himself into the darkness, like kind of berates him in a certain way. And he eventually, like, this is like kind of it's similar to the Sora half of the story, kind of not that important. The actual levels are like not horribly different.
No,
but
you're Riku.
But you are Riku, and like you're seeing a different path of the
Your
story,
sprite
right?
is different.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the changes that end up happening in these levels is just that he is trying to fight against the people who he was allied with in the first one. So like the first person you fight is Maleficent, and he's very much like trying to reject the darkness here.
Yeah.
Worth remembering that in the first one, he at Hollow Bastion was like totally like, I'm in on the darkness, dog. Like I'm fully bad Riku. And I'm just having a good time.
The only way to save my friends.
Yes, yeah. I think we talked about this a little bit in the first episode, but like it felt when I was a kid, like wow, Riku's being a total shithead. But in hindsight as an adult, I'm like, he is also trying to save his friends in the best way he knows how. He's just totally misguided.
The nuance is lost to a child.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah. Like I was just like, dude, Sora's the best. What are you talking about? Like Riku's an asshole. But
Goku and Vegeta vibes.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Riku ends up beating Maleficent and then, you know, going to another one of these like layers in the castle. Ansem like does show up in the form that he was in the first game.
Yes.
And he sort of gestures at the fact that he's trying to gain control over Riku and that there's this like internal battle that is going on between the two of them. He directly tries to do that at some point, and then a little mote of light shows up and seems to be none other than Mickey Mouse trying to talk to Riku.
Yeah, that was my first big note for this bit. Was anytime Mickey showed up, I could not keep it together. That's such like a trite thing to say. Like obviously, it's like, oh, it's silly when Mickey Mouse shows up, but like it is silly when Mickey Mouse shows
every time.
up.
Every time.
Just every time. Every time.
I think in the first one, it's, I don't know, a little bit strange because it's like the last thing that happens. You barely interact with Mickey. And in the second one, he's like around at specific times, but it's weird that he's just like fully a character here and is like interacting with Riku very frequently.
When he's more elusive, he's a more compelling character.
Yes,
if there's a lot of Mickey Mouse, it just feels like, I don't know, leans more into the Disneyness of it all, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does take away from the Kingdom Hearts-ness of it all.
Totally.
If that makes sense.
I think he is served better when he is Gandalf the White, just sort of like a mysterious force that has somehow come back to this world rather than Gandalf the guy who's just like hanging out.
I'm just a guy. I'm Gandalf.
It's just me, Gandalf. It's kind of like a horror movie logic where it's like Mickey's only cool when he's not on screen. And then as soon as you show Mickey, it's like, oh, it's Mickey Mouse.
The cartoon character. Yeah,
the cartoon character Mickey Mouse that I know his voice and he sounds exactly like that.
It's just like, this is who I've been looking forward to.
It's like, wait, what? But at least at the end of the first one, he's like he's in Kingdom Hearts or whatever. He's in the key. It's like very cool. It's like, oh my gosh, wow. I wonder what Mickey's up to.
Yeah.
And then when he shows up here, he's like, what's up, Riku? Like, we're friends. I'm Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I was definitely gassed seeing him in the end of the first one. It's just like,
it's cool.
How did he get there? It's Mickey Mouse. This is crazy. We've been alluding to him this whole time. But then when he's just hanging out and just maybe not this unstoppable force of nature, which he kind of feels like in the first one, it's like, oh, he's just Mickey. He's just still Mickey.
He's just Mickey. Calling Mickey Mouse an unstoppable force is really getting me.
Disney is going to be calling us up soon. Be like, hey, can we get some advertising on your podcast now?
It's a pretty sick phrase.
The unstoppable force of Mickey Mouse and democracy. Anyways, this is getting off track.
There's like, I think it's even, I wouldn't say handled better, but differently in the second one where there's like a kind of a joke scene where Mickey Mouse shows up in the second one and it's like they're talking and then it's just like, hey fellas, and then it cuts to Mickey Mouse in the Organization 13 hood. But they like sort of like kind of, it looks sick. But there's a moment too where like something bad happens, which I'm so excited to talk about whenever we get to 2. And Mickey Mouse like throws off his organization hood like it's fucking Yakuza, and it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And so like they are able to harness how cool he can be in other games, but this one, it's just like, don't give yourself over to the darkness, Riku. Like a lot of that in this game.
It seems like you were on a precipice whenever you were trying to make Mickey Mouse cool. There's a very small area for which you can land and make it work. But if you go too far in either direction, it just falls flat real fast.
You can't let us think about it for too long.
Yes.
Like he can't be on screen long enough for us to be like, oh, it's Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's see. So Mickey does encourage Riku not to give up. He's not actually there. It just seems to be like some like mental connection with Riku that they have. We also get this quote. I think it's from Ansem or Mickey. I actually didn't write it down, so it could be either of them, but we'll see. It says, running towards the light won't be distance between yourself and the darkness, which is like, I think so critical for the rest of the story is that.
Wait, say that again.
It's running towards the light won't put distance between yourself and the darkness.
That's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I, again, to kind of show my hand early here, I think like this is pretty good storytelling. Like it reminds me a lot of the story in Celeste, where it's like it is trying, you are trying to run from this part of yourself for so much of the game.
Yeah.
And only in embracing it will it actually get you to the place that you want to go.
Yeah.
Celeste was so good.
Celeste was really good.
Let's just talk about Celeste instead.
This is the Celeste bonus episode now. Welcome. So let's see. We also get introduced to two other new Organization 13 people. One of them is Lexius and the other one is Zexion. And also Vexen is back, which initially I was like, what? Didn't he die a few moments ago in the first half? But I think what it's doing is establishing that these events are running concurrently to what's happening with Sora. And so it's helpful to know that, because at first I was like, when are we right now? But you like get these scenes where Vexen has clearly like just spoken to other members of the organization. It's helpful to signpost where we're at this point.
Yeah.
Zexion mentions that the scent of one of the intruders smells like that of the superior, which I think they're talking about Ansem here. We get a lot of references to stink in this half of the game.
They all got super sniffers, dude.
Yeah.
They're
Like-
just constantly talking about how everything and everyone smells.
Yes, yeah.
Which isn't a thing that happened in the Sora half,
No,
right? Like,
no.
this is new information.
They're actually
That's so
nose
funny.
bodies.
Wow.
Stop it. Cut the podcast. We're
Yeah,
done.
we're done. That's
There's a
it.
translation
Holy
error
shit.
actually from Japanese to English. They're actually nose bodies. Their body is made completely of noses. Sorry,
man.
continue, please.
Oh, Lord.
I'm just here to derail things right now.
Let's see. So Ghost Mickey shows up again and gasses Riku up again, saying, quote, just because the darkness holds you, don't forget who you are. He says that Riku has to fight the darkness that's taken hold of him. And then the Organization 13 people say that the darkness let Riku out of Kingdom Hearts. And so they seem to know who Riku is somehow. Again, this is like very much a new body of characters. And so it was bizarre in the moment to be like, how do you guys know who the fuck Riku and Sora are? Like, it's very strange, but they do seem to get it. Vexen introduces the idea that like their leader both is and isn't Ansem, which makes more sense once you play 2, but right now just is like totally bananas. Like, what are you talking about now?
Yeah.
So this is also where we get introduced the idea that like the plan of Organization 13 was to like mess Sora up enough to make him work for Organization 13. That like if his memories were like out of order and messed up and then replaced with ones where he was like friendly with Organization 13, he might work for them and sort of be able to carry out what they want to do. Which obviously doesn't end up happening, but it's helpful to know that, because in the second one, when they show up, I'm like, I don't know what these guys are doing or like why they don't like Sora now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Naminé seems to also totally remake Puppet Riku at some point and then also plants the charm on him. So like we were talking about before, there was that like puppet clone version of Riku. And Naminé like at some point there's like this disagreement, and she just like totally wipes Puppet Riku's memory and replaces it with like all these other like fake ones, and then also giving him the charm, thereby setting up the conflict that you see in the first half where Sora has to fight with this Puppet Riku, because Puppet Riku's like, no, dude, like these are my memories. I have the charm too. Like, what are you talking about?
A very witchy thing to do.
Very witchy.
Ooh.
Yeah, that is true.
I thought that setup was so interesting.
Yeah.
Like we talk about it in the Sora section. Like we know that Naminé has done all this stuff, but like, but actually like seeing it happen is just really cool. Cause I don't really think we see much of Naminé's power in the first part. It's just like talked about, and like I mean, she obviously is like making the worlds and stuff, and like puts Sora in the egg at the end. But like, we never see her actively, I guess, influencing the story in some bits. But when she gives him the the charm and is like, you said you'd protect me forever or whatever. Just very good stuff. Very good stuff.
Yeah,
totally. Larxene also seems to be trying to offer Naminé a path to being like a quote unquote real person through Sora's heart, which like starts to dig into the lore of what a nobody even is. I said this in the first half, but it kind of bears repeating that I don't know if the game ever comes down on the idea that nobodies are or are not people, but they sure do seem to show them experiencing the things that they say that they lack a lot of the times. Like Axel pretty oftentimes recognizes like, oh, I care about this person, or I feel something about this person. Yeah. But they still are kind of tied to this idea that they aren't whole in some way. And so I think a lot of the like motivation that you see from the nobodies in the series is that they're trying to be like full people, you know, reunite their lost hearts with this body that now exists.
What it always seemed to me is that, and after playing the second one a little bit more, is that the nobodies are very much characterized as being able to experience emotions, but not being able to understand them and process them. So it's like they have these things going on, but they're just like, what the heck is happening to me right now? I just don't get it. And it's because they don't got that heart.
Sure.
Interesting.
It's interesting. I finished playing Persona 3 recently, and the character of Aigis is very similar to a lot of the Heartless here, where she seems to think that she isn't capable of like human emotion or like caring about people, despite the fact
she's the robot, right?
She's the robot, yeah.
Okay.
That game comes down on the side that like, even though she's not fully human, she's experiencing these things, and that is enough, right? And so like, I do wish that they hit that a little harder here, because I honestly think that is what the game believes, but they keep showing you these people who are like, I don't know, man, I'm not really human. What the fuck is going on with me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And demonstrated by the fact that Naminé is like, well, maybe I should do this because I do want to be a real person.
Yeah.
Even if that's not possible, because I don't know that we ever really see that happen in the series. I haven't played all the way through 3, so I don't know. But like, it's pretty rare that people are able to totally reunite their heart with their body. Anyway, so Lexia shows up wanting to control the real Riku. He seems to think that like Riku can control the darkness rather than run from it, which is like maybe correct. Lexius beats up and forces the darkness out of Riku. However, it then like totally takes control over Riku and kills Lexius like instantly.
Yep.
It's like kind of a brutal scene. You can see him like just totally give himself over, and then just like you experience this whole fight as the player, and then in a cutscene he gets taken over and just immediately offs Lexius. Again, it's interesting to see, but you know, there's more to come here. So anyway, Riku's shown floating around the darkness again and talks to Ansem some more. He says that the darkness is Riku's heart, and he also seems to be trying to take over Riku completely. However, again, Ghost Mickey shows up and repels Ansem, and Riku wakes up and like gets control of his body again. Zexion encounters Riku and mentions that Sora is in the castle. He says that he can see Sora, but that he needs to control himself with the darkness because it's like, he says it's like shameful to show up in the state that he's in. Again, trying to kind of like manipulate him here. Zexion says that Sora is always going to be fighting the darkness, and that puts him directly in like the warpath of each other, right? Comparing the fact that like Sora is head empty and just like always on the side of the light, like no problem. And doesn't struggle with it in the same way that Riku does. Again, it's the mental health metaphor here. And I think they're trying to manipulate Riku into saying like, hey, people don't like you because you're depressed, dude. Like, because you're all sad all the time. Like, even your happy-go-lucky friends who don't struggle with mental anguish are going to be like, ooh, this guy sucks. Fuck Riku. Oh, yeah. So Zexion questions if Riku can really even care because he destroyed this place in his quest for darkness. He taunts him and tries to convince Riku that the real version of him, this is on Destiny Islands, by the way. They like take him back to that spot. He taunts him and tries to convince Riku that the real version of him is the one that destroyed this place, and that he doesn't really care about it anymore. This is what happened in the very first part of the first game, where like Riku's like, I'm not scared of the darkness, and then sort of like gives himself over to it. Again, showing some like genuine character growth, which is like sick, cool. Zexion also makes a fake Sora to fight Riku.
Yeah.
And then Sora does the like key opening thing where he like points the Keyblade at Riku and like sends him somewhere else. And it's at this point that somehow Kairi shows up. Like at least in Riku's mind or something, and says that Riku has to find the balance between the light and the dark to save himself. That he has to look at the darkness as hard as he can if he wants to know who he is and find his friends, which like, now we're talking, baby. This is good. It's the conversation in Celeste with you know who, if you've played the game.
Everybody gasp.
So yeah, the fake Sora was just Zexian. Riku finds his way out of the light prison and then beats ass.
What a sentence.
I know.
That's what happens.
I mean, it's what happens, but that's just quite a sentence.
And then Mickey Mouse shows up. Yeah.
That's 2 bullet points below here. But the actual person who shows up in this moment is Axel and offers the puppet Riku the life of Zexian. And puppet Riku just absolutely kills him immediately, which is like, God damn, dude, this is harrowing. Ansem also almost gets control of Riku completely, but then actual real body Mickey shows up to help.
And then Hatsune Miku shows up.
And then Hatsune Miku shows up. Yeah.
Can we get a Vocaloid, whatever the main theme song is called for this game? Oh my God, I forgot what the main theme is called.
Simple and Clean?
Yes, can we get a Vocaloid Simple and Clean in here, Chase? Thank you.
Yeah, depending on how many hours I have before I fly to Japan, that will determine if you hear that right now or not.
You know what you have to do for the next 2 days.
So Mickey says in this moment that when Riku embraced the darkness in himself and let himself be seen, that's how Mickey found him, which I was like, that's pretty good, actually.
That's deep.
Yeah,
that's
rocks.
great.
It's very good to kind of make this comparison that if you're I'm making the logical leap that this is mental health stuff. I don't think that it's so far off because we're literally talking about darkness and Riku's sad a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see them make the comparison that hiding this is doing no one any good. Yeah. And that when you let yourself be seen in that way, that's how people can actually find you and attach to you.
Help you.
Which is a cool thing to say in a game for kids, and also to say it this deep into the metaphor.
Yes. God.
We're so many layers in at this point.
Yeah.
So to be able to make that point now is wow, that's actually pretty good. Thanks, guys. They show up in Twilight Town at some point here, which is another place that I don't know that we've seen necessarily in this game yet. We've been to the mansion that Naminé ends up being in the second one, but I don't know that we've seen the rest of Twilight Town. So at this point it's where are we in the game? Ansem says that he and Riku have to fight, that's just part of this. But in this moment, Riku realizes that this Ansem is not here to take him over, but was just trying to get Riku to find balance in himself. And eventually the Ansem who is in front of them at this point reveals that he is this character named Diz.
Love it.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that an acronym for, Chase?
It's Darkness in Zero.
Darkness in Zero, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
What in the world does that mean? Okay, so
it says darkness and a number.
It's darkness and a number.
Yeah.
Like I had said in the beginning of this episode, I played this game when it was out on the Game Boy Advance in 2005 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a PlayStation, so I never played any of them until college, and then I never played through 2. So, but I'm a millennial person. I've been around. I thought that I had picked up every piece of Kingdom Hearts lore just kind of by osmosis. But when Diz showed up, I actually grabbed my head and said, "What?" out loud, because I didn't think there was anything I didn't know about this game. I had never seen Diz before in my life. I had no idea. I have no idea who this man is.
Right.
To tell you that full story will ruin a part of Kingdom Hearts 2.
Sure. I'll have to listen to the episode then.
He's a pretty important character. Actually,
he's
actually a
shockingly
very
important
character.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
Who has a connection to all of this, for sure.
Sure does.
But in this moment, you are also, I think, supposed to be who on earth is this man? He also says Riku, I'm going to need you to choose. He doesn't say what the choice is, but he's at some point you will have to choose what path you walk. And then there's they sort of go away from each other, and Riku moves on. But Riku and Puppet Riku encounter each other outside this mansion, and Puppet Riku gets pissed off because he's I don't feel like a real person. All these memories that I have are fake, and gets mad at real Riku fighting him. And of course, real one does end up winning. And then in the moments where Puppet Riku is actually dying here, real Riku is I assure you that I think we're going to end up in the same place when we die. Like the space that we will go to is the same. And so like, does that make us very different at the end of this all? Again, it's a children's game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tatsuya Nomura said, I want to make a Game Boy one because kids wanted me to make a Kingdom Hearts game.
Well,
which
probably
is just
knew that the
bananas.
kids weren't always going to play this one. This is the side game, the extra game for the adults who pick
true.
this
Yes,
one up.
yeah.
It's true.
This is Kingdom Hearts After Dark with
After
Riku.
Dark with Riku.
At this point, he gets into the mansion and finds Naminé, seemingly after she has locked Sora up in the pod.
Yeah.
And Naminé says, like, the choice he has to make is to either lock his heart down and like seal the part of Ansem that is in him, that like part of Ansem had imprinted on him in the first one, and like that part of him has not gone away. And so like he will have to either seal that away, but in doing so, he will stop remembering the darkness and also stop remembering like everything. It's just going to like completely shut him down, or allowing the idea that like he has to give himself over to one or the other, that like this middle path is like kind of a tough one to walk. But Riku ends up saying like he has to try and fight Ansem and won't lock his heart away. Another great emotionally cut off metaphor of like, I don't want to just shut myself down as a response to this, which like, again, is a understandable response for somebody who has like depression or something like that, that my solution to this is just going to be total disconnection.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see them like, again, kind of hammering on the idea that like, he's like, I think the only way to do this is to just kind of look at it as much as I can and understand this part of myself. Diz again shows up and in person says, I could be anybody or nobody. It's up to you whether or not you want to believe in me, which is cool. I think Diz has actually the correct take about being a nobody. Is like, it's not necessarily what is like quote unquote real or not. If people believe in you and care about you, that's like real and not fake.
So it's like Santa Claus.
He's a little bit like Santa Claus. Honestly, I mean, he's got the beard and everything.
He runs on belief.
Oh my God.
However, in this moment, Diz also hands Riku an Organization 13 hood and says that like if Riku wears it, the organization won't be able to pursue him. It somehow like hides him from their vision.
It hides nobodies, I think, in particular. It's like, this is your special nobody hiding, or like makes them think you're a nobody.
Yeah. And so like he's able to like dodge them a little bit. Eventually Mickey will also get one of these, which is like kind of cool.
Sick.
Looks kind of sick.
With ear cutouts.
Yeah, with the ear cutouts.
IP compliant ear cutouts.
Diz also hands Riku another card and says that like he's gonna have to face Ansem if he wants to like finish this.
Can we pause for a moment?
Yeah.
About the cards. The amount of times in the Riku story where someone holds a card up in two hands and then flicks it at another person, and Riku catches it. He catches it with his arm over his shoulder. It happens like 6 or 7 times the exact same way. And also, to just get really nitpicky, they have like 2 songs in this part of the game. It's like the same tracks over and over and over again in all these cutscenes. It's so funny.
Yeah,
this is our card throwing music.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. You do that as Riku. I think that's like the last boss, is that you fight Ansem and of course win. Ansem seems pissed that Riku like accepts the darkness but not him, which is cool. I think also speaking to the fact of like, if you're a person who is like struggling with this kind of problem, that it can be helpful to accept the emotion but not the person who you are when you are that way, and not to like say that these are both the same person, you know, that you can put some distance between yourself and that, which is like, again, just kind of like weirdly mature writing for a game that's talking about Kingdom Hearts all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And throwing cards at one another.
In a cool way.
In a cool way. In an anime way.
Yeah.
Riku does beat Ansem, but Ansem's like, I'm going to come back eventually, dude. Like, that's just part of this. And then, of course, Riku and Mickey leave Castle Oblivion, not having lost their memories, notably.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Which sets them up for kind of what happens in 358/2, and then also in just Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah.
Cool game. Cool story.
Yeah. It's so good. And I mean, you've alluded to this a couple of times, or just like straight up said that it's like, you know, accepting the darkness within you. But the line, your darkness belongs to you just like your light, like had me fist pumping. I was like, this is great. This is so good. I do think Mickey Mouse says it, but
Sure.
it's a really good line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this thesis of like Riku's half is like so much better than Sora's.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I feel like Sora's half was just like, well, we need a reason for him to forget everything so he can be at level 1 again.
Yeah.
But this just feels like it has so much intention thematically. It's just and it works really, really, really well.
I think it's great that they decided to make Riku more of a main character going forward from this game, because it seems like, you know, like this was maybe just something that could have been an afterthought just thrown on afterwards. Like, like what both of you thought it was going to be when you played it as kids. Like, I'm just going to play through the game again, and it's going to be Riku, it's going to be the same story, and it's not going to be that interesting.
Right.
But they really cooked something up pretty interesting here and really laid the groundwork for Riku as an interesting character for the rest of the series from here on out. Because in the last game, before this one was just Kingdom Hearts 1, he was a conflicted character, but you didn't get the depth of it that you get with it here. And there's just so many more interesting themes and elements that they can hit on with this character and this story than they can with Sora, right? So it really is, you know, two sides of the same coin, but it's really interesting and nice that they were able to expand the thematic story and like what they can touch on through this little almost seeming side project on a Game Boy game.
Yeah. In the first game, Riku just feels misguided, right? And it's like, I get that. You know, he's a kid, whatever. He just like thought the wrong thing. But like to show him, and Chase, as you said, like to show him as like kind of a depressed person who is just like trying so hard to make anything work.
Yeah.
Is just so much more compelling and works so well.
Yeah, it's good. Like he is, I don't know, he's more complex to me than a lot of other parts of the series are.
Yeah,
totally.
I think that like you don't really see characters as round as he is until you get to Birth by Sleep, which brings in a lot of like, there's the three sort of trio characters there that I think all kind of struggle with this in some way. And it's like kind of helpful that Sora is the main character because you never really like stray from the path very much.
Stray from the light.
He's head empty and like he's just going to do the right thing. It comes up a lot in Dream Drop Distance because you're playing as Riku again there, and he like clearly has an internal life and an internal monologue because he talks about it really frequently of like, oh yeah, when I gave myself over in the first one, like it was hard for me to come back and shit like that, and talks about sort of the effects that took on him. Yeah, which is all just like really good. It feels like a different kind of writing in the same game.
Yeah, Sora's stuff is very much like I can do anything as long as I have my friends beside me. And Riku's stuff is like the friends help, but also I can do this on my own, but in a way that is healthy. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I feel like his arc goes from I can do this on my own unhealthy to I can do this on my own healthy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Yeah.
It's just kind of reframes. I think that's part of what makes him so interesting is like his motivations stay internal. They're just like, it's just a matter of the framing of it, which is, it's really, really interesting.
I liked what you said about how they each use their friends in their struggles. Like, Sora's struggles are very much external. He is fighting against things that are coming at him in the physical world. Riku is very much internal. So he definitely relies on his friends in a different way as a support system emotionally. Totally. Like when Mickey comes up as a little ray of light ghost Mickey, just giving him words of encouragement, because this is really a battle that he is the one who has to fight it pretty much on his own. Since, you know, it's not an outward battle, it's an inward battle, and your friends can't come in there and help you with that. They can support you, but you got to find the will to do it on your own.
That's what makes this setting of Castle Oblivion so interesting. Is like it is all basically in your head, you know.
Yeah,
and that's where Riku's battle takes place.
Absolutely
throughout the games, but everything else is externalized in the rest of the games. But not in Castle Oblivion, baby. It's all in your head. Yeah.
Just like a quick note, I think it's kind of interesting that you're not able to change Riku's deck very much. That like there's something there, you know, about how Sora is able to kind of like adapt to whatever situation he's in, but like Riku's much more rigid in his understanding of like how to interact with this world.
Yeah.
And so these like shifts in perspective mean a lot to him. Whereas, like Sora shows up in a new world and is like, there's talking lions here and I'm a lion now. I don't care. Like, it's fine. I'm going to go beat Scar's ass.
Hakuna Matata, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm Hakuna Matata now. I'm Hakuna Matata maxing right now.
Man.
I'm Pumbaa pilled.
Pumbaa pilled.
Oh my God.
Pumbaa pilled. Man.
Yeah.
We were Toomba pilled as a kid. That's for sure.
We were Toomba pilled. Yeah.
Good
That's
game.
true.
Toomba.
That's fun. That's a good game.
Ride some pigs. Ride some Poombas as Toomba. Whoa.
Ride some Poombas as
Whoa.
Toomba.
The full Oomba is here.
I wish that this title or this episode was titleable other than Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories or Chain of Memories, because Toombable, whatever that was a good one.
Toombable. Toombable.
Yeah.
You could say featuring
Toomba on Boomba.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's full Oomba circle.
The full Oomba. That's what
The
it was.
full
Thank you.
Oomba.
The full Oomba. Whoa.
Featuring the
my
full
God.
Oomba. That definitely sounds like a band.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
just like
yeah.
it's like a Johnny Carson featuring the full Oomba. Why is that Johnny Carson and not any of the contemporary late night
Yeah.
bands?
I
like it.
don't
I like
know
it.
why.
I think it makes
it's
sense.
classier
Yeah.
in a way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like a big band situation.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there are
yeah.
horns. There are horns in that band.
Yeah, this is the full Oomba. John Quincy's orchestra featuring the full Oomba.
Chumbawamba's going on tour with the full Oomba this summer.
Chumbawamba featuring the full Oomba.
Oh my God.
Chumba Poomba. This is getting nonsensical.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a read on this game about specifically, I really tried, specifically about like manipulating children.
Yeah, definitely.
And kind of what solidified it for me a little bit, Chase, was when you said, or when you brought up Diz saying like basically a nobody is whatever you think it is. Like reality is what you believe it to be. And I think for a lot of the game, reality is a lot of, or for like Sora and Riku and Namine, like these like children, teens, children, whatever, like reality is whatever they are told it is. And then the game is about them figuring out, but like they are ultimately in control of their reality. Regardless of what other people tell them is like the correct way to think or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Like a lot of what Riku struggles with is because, well, I mean, it's initially because he's like, oh, I'll embrace the darkness, it'll be fine. But then he is being manipulated by Ansem and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, no. And like throughout this game, people are like, hey, nobody likes you. Like you should just give in to the darkness, whatever. And him fighting against that. And Sora's whole thing is like, people are just constantly telling him like, hey, you're doing great. Keep it up. You're doing awesome. Thank you so much.
The organization too is kind of egging Sora on the whole time because they're like, keep moving through the castle so we can use you as an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of when you show up to those scenes, the first time I played it as a kid, I was like, why is everybody being so mean to Sora?
Yeah.
But it's very much just them like knowing where to poke to like push his buttons essentially so that he will continue to be like, no, I gotta keep going through here.
Yeah. Nominees, I think, is like the most straight up, just like full on manipulation of a child. Just like reality is what I'm telling you it is. And you have to do this if you want this thing to happen, I think that is like the most basic manipulation in this story, at least.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a very interesting angle, and I'm not sure exactly if the game has something to say about it or really like where it ends up with it. But it is interesting that it, like, with all of the children characters in this game, like they are being manipulated in some way.
I think it's just good to maybe model to kids to, how they can be manipulated by older folks, right? Especially ones wearing black trench coats all the time.
Yes, of course.
Right. So I think it is a good way to show, like, people are going to try to use you, right? And it's then at the end of the game, both these characters find ways to be like, okay, no, these people are using me. I need to be aware of that, and I can fight against that because I am in control of my own thoughts and being and body.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it has anything more to say than that, but maybe just like a good way to show, the people who are this game is marketed to, like, hey, people are going to do this, and just be aware of that, and you can fight against it.
Yeah, I think that's a great read. I love that.
Even with the instance of Puppet Riku, who's like not just manipulated like mentally, like he's fully being controlled by them,
Yeah.
They
Created
can change
by
his
them.
memories. Yeah, they're created by him, constantly like just changing his memories and like replacing it with fake ideas. It shows like how destructive that can be to a person's like identity.
Whoa.
And I think most of this game is orbiting around identity usually. And so I like, even in the case where it's talking about this like idea of being manipulated, I think it is the end result of that is someone finding who they are and then being able to like make decisions from that place. And then the manipulative part of it is just like this person doesn't exactly know who they are yet. And so they're like able to be taken advantage of by, the actions of other people, of Sora being like, I don't and this is of no fault of his own because his memories are being fucking replaced, but like, he's like, I don't remember exactly the people who I care about. And so, you know, that's going to kind of throw me for a loop. Or Riku not knowing that he has to accept part of, you know, the dark part of him to be able to like move forward. And even Naminé being like, you know, she's in kind of a tough position because like if she said no, I don't think there's going to be a lot of like great things that come out of that. But
Totally.
like she is the one who is still pulling the trigger on like making these changes in memories. And so I wouldn't say complicit because she's like a kid, but I think it's important that she chooses to be like, hey, here's my power. And what should we do with that with Sora? Like they talk about it and she offers him like, I can do this, but it's going to come at a cost rather than like just doing it because, you know, somebody told her to.
So if we're taking this into a context of modern society, does that make Naminé, Cambridge Analytica, and Organization 13 the GOP?
Oh my God, David.
Yeah.
Like, is this just a big fake news, like cautionary tale, this whole entire game? Like, that's not what I'm thinking of. And just everything you were saying just then, I'm just like, man, that I can see a lot of parallels with just modern world social media influence and everything like that, especially targeting young kids. Whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm looking too much into this, but it struck a chord with me a little bit there.
If there is a world where Hideo Kojima directed this game, then there would be a Facebook where this was also happening.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think Nomura's has a little bit of a softer touch than
Absolutely. Yes.
Kojima does.
Kojima uses a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
I was just about to say we usually give Kojima props for being able to call the modern internet, but maybe Nomura was doing it here too.
Maybe he was doing it.
He was just doing a little bit more subtly.
I also sort of appreciate the approach that they're taking here with what identity means when you've like kind of merged consciousnesses with someone. In the case of Riku and Ansem, like I really always love like the media where people talk about that, of like Ghost in the Shell does this right towards the end where they're like, you know, talking about if Major merges with the villain in that movie, is that person that comes out either one of those people or not, or like who is that afterwards?
Are you Kami or Piccolo?
Yeah, exactly the same thing, right? Where like once they merge, who's the new guy that shows up? And like that doesn't have maybe a direct parallel to real life, right? Like there's no merging that really happens in real life, but I think it speaks just more broadly to like if you are growing up or changing or turning into a new person, and like how do you take into consideration who you used to be, and like who is that new person now? Is that the same person? Can you distance yourself enough from that, or like what does that mean for you?
I do. I think, you know, you're not literally merging with other people, but I do think as you grow, you do become you take pieces of other people's like fabrics and build it into your own quilt. I don't know. I really tried to make a thing
that works.
That was great.
I'm in.
That was great.
But in the end, it's like, I guess the ship of Theseus as well. It's like, how much of yourself can you replace before you're a totally different person? And like, do you ever become a totally different person, or are you you're still shaped like a boat? So are you still just a boat, or are you something different now?
Ansem was shaped like a boat.
Yeah, he was.
Ansem, he does go full boat. That's true.
I have one question real quick.
Sure.
Is it canonical that is actually Ansem, or is this just the manifestation that Riku's darkness has chosen to personify as, because he was taken over by Ansem?
I don't know if we get a specific answer about like, is that the same guy?
Yeah. Or is it just like how he views his darkness as like the most evil thing he can think of, which would be Ansem?
A boat?
A boat man.
A big boat. Riku fucking hates boats.
Hates boats, dude.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
He went to the Pirates of the Caribbean world and just decimated it. Decimated it.
You're a what? A pirate?
There's how many boats in this world? My God.
Oh my God.
I don't know that we ever get a specific answer. I think something that happens in 2, or like sort of between this one and the next one, part of me thinks that like maybe there's like a bit of his soul that's left in Riku.
Gotcha. Like a Horcrux.
Because something like that, because in oh God, what game was that in? I think Birth by Sleep. I think like that like Ventus kind of lives in Sora.
His heart
like
does.
His soul. Yes. So like there's this idea that you can sort of like be a part of someone without like totally
you can
existing
store
in the same way.
In other hearts.
Yes. Yeah.
If they let you in.
And so I think by Riku, I think by Riku letting Ansem in, there's like a part of him left in there still.
Okay, I see that.
Plus, like with all the wild shit that happens in 3 and like all the different manifestations of Ansem that show up there. But we'll get to it when we get to it. Any other like thematic stuff that we wanted to bring up here?
I didn't have anything else. No.
Yeah.
Good themes. Enjoyed it.
Great themes.
Yeah.
Killer themes. We asked for a handful of questions from people in the Discord and got some about this game. Thank you for anybody who sent those in. So why don't we, I think we answered a few of these already just in the conversations that we had, but why don't we run down a few of them and talk about them? Sound good?
Yes.
Sounds great.
All right, sweet. So I think one of you may have a direct answer for this. Eric B in Discord asked, how would you feel about the Kingdom Hearts series if this was the first one you had ever played? AJ?
Yeah. About the series, I don't even think I really have like a full answer for that one, because I did watch I did watch a couple of my friends play Kingdom Hearts, like the original when it did come out. But this being the first one I played, honestly, I had like no thoughts about it. I was like, so I think especially with the Game Boy Advance version, and we had talked about this a little bit in the first section or the first half of the show about like the cards in the Game Boy Advance version felt like they had to do that because of hardware restraints, and then the cards in the PS2 version felt weird that they were making them actually canonical.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think the fact that the cards felt so good in the Game Boy Advance version, I was just having a great time playing the game, and I wasn't necessarily thinking about the story like at all, because I knew that this was the follow up to the first game. I was like, I'm already behind. I don't really know what's going on, so I'm going to play this and I'm going to have a good time, and then I'm not going to play the actual good part of the game when I finish the Sora story. Good story wise,
Yeah.
But I think that might be an unsatisfying answer, but my thought was like, I had no thoughts really. I was just enjoying the card part of the game.
I can't totally speak to this experience because like obviously I had played the first one, but I have to imagine that like if you've just played nothing, that it's got to be sort of a shocking experience, you know, because the Disney of it all is really not explained. And I guess it isn't really in the first one either, but there's like these ideas of going to other worlds. That's like, yeah, sure. Maybe one of them is a Disney world. That makes sense.
Could happen.
Sure.
You can't say it wouldn't be there.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see. We got a number of questions from listener Rufus. Thank you, Rufus.
Thank you, Rufus.
Chase, hey, how much does this game tickle your love of deck building games? The first time I played it, I wasn't crazy about it, but I also didn't love deck building at the time. This time I liked it quite a bit more. I did, this was sort of bizarre that this happened, and I don't think this is the intended way to play this game at all, but I was playing this a lot on those like retro handhelds that I have. And one of the features of that I love is the ability to fast forward. And so I was playing this on like 2 times speed pretty frequently. And this game is really hard if you're playing it that quickly, like in the battle mode. And so I tried to set up my decks in a way where I could just hold the turbo hit button.
Holy shit.
And it would just turn into an auto battler.
Whoa.
Where Sora's just like swinging his sword all over the place and like it's still working.
Jeez.
So that was pretty fun to be able to figure out like how many attacks do I need, and then how many of those like ethers that you do that will, you know, automatically refill your attacks. How many of those do I need to be able to make this work at all?
So you just turned your little portable into a Mad Catz controller.
Pretty much, yeah, because they have a turbo button.
Yo,
I'll just do that.
Damn.
So I think like comparing it to like a modern like Slay the Spire or something like that, like they're very different games, but I do appreciate that this one is trying something in that realm. I found it like pretty novel and really fun.
Yeah.
The PS2 version less so, but we've hammered on it enough. Rufus also asked, if you didn't play this game before 2, did you feel like you had missed out on something?
Yes.
Yes. The answer is exceptionally yes.
I don't think I felt like I missed out on gameplay, because definitely one of my toxic gamer traits as a child was that I didn't enjoy card battlers. So this was not something that I wanted to try at all.
Sure.
But I was so confused. About the story, about why these people in black cloaks were there, why there was, what's the name of the actor who plays Diz in Kingdom Hearts 2? He has such a very deep, resonant voice. Christopher Lee. Why is Christopher Lee saying all these crazy things about darkness to me now? Who is this Naminé girl? It was just confusing. It was very confusing.
Yeah.
And it made it kind of hard to get into the second one when it was just a lot of questions as to why, how, what, where, when am I doing, and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was confusing, and maybe giving you the experience of having your memories erased between the first game and the second game. So maybe it was by design, because it's just like a lot of people aren't going to play this one, so I'm really going to make it feel like they went to Castle Oblivion.
Did you have the thought while you were playing 2 and not knowing what was going on, like, oh, I should have played Chain of Memories, or was it just like, man, I wonder what's happening?
I actually didn't have the thought of like I should have played Chain of Memories, because it was kind of a new concept at the time to have portable game be so integral to the story for a console game. Back then, they were very much two different like tiers of gaming, right? Console games are like, this is where the serious stuff happens, and then portable games are like, oh, that's like just a fun little thing you do on the side for an hour or so, and then you go on to something real in quotation marks, right? So I think that they, at least that was my interpretation of it. So I didn't think that there was going to be actual story in this game as a kid. So I'm glad I've gone back and played it. I just thought they were just doing something very Kingdom Heartsy, just like, all right, this is just a cold open. Here we go.
I was very bad when I was younger at understanding when I shouldn't know the correct answer to something. In a movie or a book or anything, when they're purposely being ambiguous and you're like, oh, well, I'm not supposed to know right now. I was horrible at knowing when that was the case.
Yeah, sure.
Honestly, I think Kingdom Hearts was part of that. Because like, I did play Chain of Memories and I still got to 2 and was like, what the fuck is happening in here? I think part of that was just like, my reading comprehension wasn't as good at the time. Like I was just blowing through the cutscenes on the Game Boy, and also I didn't play the other half.
You didn't play that other half of the game,
And still, like, I think it's easy to say now that I have like Wikipedia at my hands to be able to understand, like, I know what a nobody is and I know what Organization 13 is, but when you're just like a kid and the only understanding you have is through the direct text of the game, sometimes I was like, I don't know what the fuck these guys are, man.
This was before the time of fancy British people on YouTube telling you what happened in the last game.
I sort of also missed out on something despite the fact I played the game. The next question Rufus asked was, what worked/didn't adapting a Kingdom Hearts story to something like the GBA?
I think what worked was the mechanics of the card battling. And I think, as evidenced by Chase and I both not getting the story from Chain of Memories, I don't think the story stuff worked. Going to a Game Boy Advance, because I think it is what you said, David. Like, the only stuff that was ever on the Game Boy Advance was like spin-offs of like that Shrek game that came out on the GameCube. There's a worse version on the Game Boy Advance also.
Do you want a worse version of this game? Here it is.
If you want a worse version, get a Game Boy Advance. But like, to oversimplify it, I do feel like that was a lot of the philosophy of like this like big IP at the time was like, if you want a worse version of this, get it on the Game Boy Advance.
Exactly. Especially when it's an IP that already exists on the console.
I like, this is the point where Kingdom Hearts starts turning into complicated storytelling. And I think that demands either voice acting or like just a little bit more room to breathe. Because I understood it so much more in the full fidelity cutscenes that they have on Recoded or Rechain of Memories rather than on the Game Boy. Despite the fact, like, they are using the script of the Game Boy game as the lines that they read in the game. So like, it's not like the writing is super different, but just being able to kind of see how people are playing off of each other, like, really helped me lock into like what was going on. So yeah, I agree. Did you immediately recognize Axel as the best spiky-haired boyfriend? Yes. You will have heard my reaction to that in this episode. I love Axel. I think Axel's the best.
I do think that was a takeaway for me as a kid too. Is like, Axel rocks. Axel's very cool.
He was extremely 2004. Like, just such a cool 2004 guy.
He's kind of like the bad boy rebel with the heart of gold.
Yes. Yeah, totally. He's the Han Solo of this video game.
Yeah, oh my God. Exactly. Riku's the emo boy, and then Axel's just like almost like the cool older brother who's just like knows a lot of things about a lot of things.
Again, to bring it up again, he's I think it's Quentin Flynn is the guy who plays Raiden, same guy, and like I think he's doing such a good job here. In this role, and then in 2 as well. He does that like kind of pompous but also weirdly vulnerable voice really well. It just works really great. I love Axel.
You can tell that it's a facade of some sort.
Yes, despite the fact he is still like charismatic and charming, you can tell like this is an act that he is like putting up a front here.
Hiding a tender heart.
Nice. Hell yeah. Rufus asked, I was delightfully surprised when the second quest came up. What did you think of Riku's story in the game? We sort of talked about this.
Yeah.
Good.
Liked
Good,
it.
and I'm sad I missed it the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. That is the part of the game that I prefer, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's more interesting.
I wish you could just choose to play that one at the top if you had the option.
Yeah.
Because it's way more interesting. And like, if you have just played the first one, it's going to feel like kind of a retread. You know?
Absolutely. And I think that's what I had read about, or a lot about this game, or what I had heard about from friends who had bought this game as a kid. They're just like, it's just pretty much the first game, but with card battling in it. I'm just like, that doesn't really sell me on it.
Yeah. Rufus also asked, the player picked rooms makes this feel like kind of a proto-roguelike. How much did you engage with trying out different rooms and layouts?
I engaged with it in that I would use the rooms that could like get you resources quite often when I needed them, and I would save them for when I really feel like I needed to get something, right? If I felt like my deck wasn't good, so I'd give it like a Moogle room to get more cards. So that's mostly how I would use it. I didn't use many or like have an intended purpose for using other card rooms beyond those ones personally.
Yeah, I think I agree. I wasn't really keyed into like...
Keyed in, huh?
Nice. I was aware of the like... oh, this means there's going to be less guys in the next room or whatever. But I was never really like purposefully trying to choose the ones that had less guys. I was just like, oh, well, I need like a 6 power. So I'm just going to grab the first 6 I see. Yeah. But like you said, David, like I was saving like the resource ones for like when I needed them. But otherwise it was just like, I need a 7. So here's a 7.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's an interesting approach, but I think you do see kind of the trappings and maybe the failings of it here too, where something I remembered when I played it the first time was that I would oftentimes get stuck where it's like, I need a card of 9 or higher power.
Yeah.
And
I
don't have any more. I don't like, I've run out of cards and I've run out of rooms. Like, what do I do now? And the solution, at least from the game's perspective, is go back and do the whole thing again.
They really brought the full Kingdom Hearts experience. Like, this is how we get you to grind in this one, baby. Let's go. You got to find the right card.
Yeah, I do think like the grind of it all is something that hasn't aged quite as well, which was fun for me, or at least like softened a little bit with the fast forwarding, because like I could just fly through these levels. But they do really expect you to play this a lot. Just the time sink is pretty intense. Like Kingdom Hearts 1 wasn't very long. I beat that in like 15 hours, 20 hours, something like that.
Sounds about right.
And I think this game was longer than that, which is bizarre. But I did the same thing where I was just kind of hoarding the high value cards and then would use like the lower value ones pretty often, or the ones that I had like an abundance of, just to make sure that I didn't get stuck in that situation again.
Yeah, you did have to be a little cognizant about it that way, a little choosy about it that way as well. I guess.
So let's see. Last question from Rufus. He said, this game still has that bittersweet vibe I associate with the series, which I think fits beautifully with the story of the fallibility of memory, especially as it relates to identity and relationships. Are there particular bits of Chain of Memories that you think the rest of Kingdom Hearts series picks up on and does a good job of exploring further?
All the Riku stuff.
Yeah, I think the Riku stuff established here is continued onward in a great way.
Absolutely. And number 2, just talking more about the nobodies. And how like memory and like heart are 2 parallel aspects of humanity, and like what makes you a person, and you kind of need both to be a full being. I do think that is brought over a little bit into number 2 at the very least, from what I remember. So I think that those are the 2 things that stick out the most to me as coming over, bleeding more into the rest of the series.
AJ? All right, yes, AJ, you haven't played.
I was going to say this question's not for me. But I'm glad to hear. I am glad to hear that the Riku stuff does like carry over from this game, because I do feel like, from what I absorbed of the first, or I did play the first one in college, but like, it was like you said, Riku was just kind of like another guy that was there who like made the wrong choice. So it is nice that he like gets an actual real arc in the future games, it sounds like.
I think Dream Drop Distance specifically is like not entirely about him, but the arc of that game feels like this is his kind of moment.
He only gets the handhelds.
I know. Yeah. Bizarre, right?
I guess Dream Drop Distance is in some way kind of like a spiritual successor to Chain of Memories, at least as far as having the dual main characters.
Yeah, true.
But I have not finished that one. That was one of those games I like tried to pick up and play like multiple times, but just couldn't get into it for one reason or another.
The opening of it isn't great.
It's pretty slow in the beginning. Yeah,
it takes kind of a long time. Yeah, it gets better, but initially I also was like, oh god, like I can't do this intro again. But it does start with the world ends with you characters, which is like kind of
cool.
sick.
Yeah.
This next question comes from TK, who asked, Kingdom Hearts feels like the most successful crossover story ever made, regardless of how much people like it or not. What do you think makes Kingdom Hearts work where others' attempts at this tend to fail?
I like that read on Kingdom Hearts in general.
Yeah.
This is the most successful crossover, whether you like it or not. Take that, Marvel.
Yeah, sorry,
Take
Marvel.
that end game.
I think part of it is that it just is so earnest. Like it's never, it never feels like it's trying to sell you something. It is just like, it does a really good job of putting you, a person who knows what all this Disney IP is, in the shoes of Sora, a person who is experiencing all this stuff for the first time, I think. But I mean, we were talking about earlier how silly it is that Mickey Mouse is in this game. So I really don't know if I have like a concrete, like, here's why it works.
Sure.
But I do think part of it is that like the game just like takes it all so seriously in a way that feels earned.
I think for me personally that like at least for 1 and 2, because and to be fair, Chain of Memories as well, because for this one, like the Disney stuff is almost the least important thing about it.
Yes. Yeah.
But for those other ones, a lot of the times the worlds and the stories that they choose to depict are ones that are kind of tied up with similar story beats to the main game. I think a lot of that typically has to do with like identity or like friendship and betrayal and stuff like that, in the way that like Kingdom Hearts does as well. And so I think you kind of get these little chapters that you get to go see, like, how would Sora react to this or to that? And it's not always the case, because like Pirates of the Caribbean's in the second one, and that's like not exactly the same thing as the Lion King or whatever. But I think for the most part, you know, the ones like Mulan or like Tarzan or something like that, where it's about like someone trying to fit into a certain place and not always being able to do that. Yeah. Or Beauty and the Beast, right? Like with this like disconnection between these two people who like seem to care about each other, but there's like something in the way there that they have chosen to sort of pick and choose things that will make you reflect on the other parts of the Kingdom Hearts story in a way that works somehow. It shouldn't, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I've thought about this a lot playing Kingdom Hearts over the years. And I think a part of what really makes it work for me is that the people who made this game have a really good idea of what makes a Disney film work on an emotional level. Which are these very broad strokes of like longing, loss, and like a feeling of need to be together and with other people, right? Having a community, having support, right? And being denied that in different ways, right? And they do a really good job of instilling kind of those core themes and ideas into their main characters that they establish in the beginning. And it just makes it feel so cohesive when they go and visit these other worlds, because they have this shared experience of life that works even when you're in, you know, Beauty and the Beast world. Like, what Beast wants to be human. He wants something that he is being denied. He wants to be close to others, but he can't, right? That is similar to things that Sora is going through. He wants to be close to his friends, but he can't because they're separated by worlds, because Kyrie's been kidnapped, all these different things, right? So they have this shared emotional bond, right? It all comes back to the heart, right? That makes it cohesive and gel, even though on the surface level, it just looks totally disparate and disjointed and kind of ridiculous in a lot of ways. But I think that is kind of the secret sauce, which is what makes this work, is this shared emotional language that they have tapped into, of knowing like how that works between different Disney films and gives them a common feel and theme, and then taking those and making them into like these characters that represent that.
Damn. Well put. Yeah. Great job.
I've thought a lot about Kingdom Hearts, apparently.
I wonder if that's also why 3 didn't work as well, because it's like,
I was about to to say.
A lot of it is just retelling exactly what happened in the movies, and there's not that like sort of connective tissue.
Yeah, they don't have that connective tissue of connection between the trio of characters and the characters in the film from the films, right?
Yeah.
They're like parallel boats. We'll go with boats again. They're parallel boats in the night. They don't ever like come together and share an experience that kind of bonds them and makes it make sense that, okay, yeah, these people would be working together, understand each other, and be wanting to group up and help each other, right? It just felt too Disneyed. Too Disneyed in number 3.
Too much Disney maxing.
Too much Disney maxing.
You guys didn't like riding the roller coasters in the game?
Look, the roller coaster was fun. Don't get me wrong, but it was a thrill ride, and that was the best you could say about it for me, at least. Yeah,
it's going to be kind of a bummer to stop this series with that game because, like, I think it's pretty universally said like it's not the good one in the series.
Look, I still maintain that the last 10 or so hours of that game is actually quite good.
Yeah,
you just have to get through a lot of other stuff first. That is kind of kills your heart a little bit having played these other games.
Sure, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
Let's see. The next question comes from FullMetalSteve, who asks, if any of you played the game at release, were you as blown away as I was from seeing the opening cutscene on your Game Boy Advance screen?
Yes.
Yes.
And I was again as a 30-year-old. I was like, holy shit, they did this on the Game Boy.
So as a kid, I don't think I understood the difference between like playing a movie on a screen or rendering it.
That's true, yeah.
And so I was like, how did they do this? Like, how on earth are they rendering this on the Game Boy? Not knowing that like they probably just rendered this on a normal like rig and then recorded that and put that on the Game Boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was shocking as a child.
Yeah. This was back when like Square Enix was like, oh, they are the master at graphics, right?
I think so. Yeah, they were definitely like being respected for like how good their shit looked.
Like, didn't Advent Child come out around this time?
Advent Children,
Advent
it might have been.
Or The Spirits Within, that one too.
Yeah. God, The Spirits Within, dude, this is a wild ass movie.
Sure was.
I think also like Final Fantasy X was also being revered for like, holy shit, this game looks amazing. In the cutscenes as well. The stuff that is actually like, pre-recorded, but damn, looks good. And then finally, last question, it's also from FullMetalSteve, asked, this game is the introduction to the series to Organization 13, one of the most infamous and memed villain troops of all time. What were your initial thoughts on them, both in the characters introduced, Axel, Marluxia, Vexen, and the concept of the shadowy group itself?
It was so mysterious. So mysterious. Why do all these people have car brand names was one of my first questions.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But I think it was just, I enjoyed it actually. I really enjoyed the concept of Organization 13. Their look is great. I love the black trench coats. It's kind of an iconic look as far as I'm concerned. The mystery around them. What are they? Who do they represent? Just dripping in mystery and begging more questions to be asked whenever you get an answer. So I definitely love that kind of stuff. It feels like a lore well you can jump into. Are they memeable? Absolutely, they are memeable.
Totally.
They're
yes, 100%.
A villain troop is a great way of putting them.
Yeah.
But I was there for it for sure.
Yeah, I think Axel being the first one you like meet, besides or like the first one you meet, like hood down, is
mask
like
off.
a great introduction. Yeah, mask off. I think is a great introduction because he is so like he is the encapsulation of the whole vibe. Like whether like Marluxia or whatever like wants to be this like edgy kind of like person, like whether or not they want to be that, they are that. And so I think Axel being the reveal of like, hey, here's what the deal is with these people. They're like kind of shady, but they're also kind of like sick, edgy. Like they listen to Hoobastank.
Ooh. Oh man.
Damn, they do listen to Hoobastank.
The reason is you, baby.
The reason is you, Sora. Yeah, so I think they're great. They're so much fun, I think, and like they can be menacing and do like some terrible stuff in like the later parts of the game, especially with like puppet Riku.
Pirate Riku.
Love it.
It works better
Have
typed
to
out.
embrace my darkness.
Yeah, RRRIKU. But like in the end, they are just kind of like yeah, like you said, troop is a great word because they're just
Yeah.
so goofy and like Donald. No, it's good. I like them, and I'm just gonna keep saying I like them in different ways. So there you go.
Over the top,
100%.
I think the depiction you have of them here is really fun, especially just like the sheer amount of mystery that they are presenting you with. I don't like, as a whole, it's hard for me to figure out if I like Organization 13 or not, because it is like very representative of the parts of Kingdom Hearts that like you need to use sparingly. Because I think this series rocks when it is just like two friends hugging each other and telling that they like each other, and like, or like saying I'll never forget you, or I'll come find you, or something like that. All that stuff is really good. And I think that like Organization 13 is cool and serves as a good like plot device a lot of the time. And I love the introduction of like nobodies and shit like that. That's, I think, idea wise, a collection of people trying to figure out how to become human again because they're uncomfortable with the form that they're in.
Yeah.
Good. Very good. But in abundance, it is overwhelming. You know, like I would be shocked if somebody who has never played this game before and listened to this episode could tell me the names of the characters again and what their deal is. It's very confusing. It's very hard to like memorize who they are and like what their motivations are and like how they differ from one to another. And so I think it's hard because like I like Axel, and so I think they nailed that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that they will also go on to nail a couple of other characters, but some of them do kind of feel disposable in a certain way. If like this person's just here to be kind of a villain of the week and then die, you know, like that's it. So I'm mixed. I'm definitely mixed on it, but it's hard to deny that, you know, they look drippy.
Yeah.
They're cool.
But what about the real Organization 13?
That's the thing. Like they really doubled down on it in the
Organization
third one.
26.
It's crazy, man.
Jesus Christ.
So we'll see.
Wow.
I end up liking, I think, the games that are a little bit more concise. You know, I like one a lot. I like Birth by Sleep a lot because it doesn't have a ton of that stuff in it. Or if the stuff that it does, it's self-contained, you know who the people are and like what their connections are to it all. Despite the fact that at the end of Birth by Sleep, it does go full lore drop. But the rest of it's pretty understandable. So yeah, thanks for your questions, everybody.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate you sending them in. They say this on Into the Aether all the time. A question segment is just the nicest embrace on any podcast. Like, so nice. It's just so easy. I don't have to come up with something to think about. It's just like, here, answer this. Like, oh yeah,
Great.
please and thank you. So thank you everybody for doing that. Any other thoughts about this video game from either of you two?
Nothing that we haven't already said.
Sure.
Don't play it on the PlayStation.
Yeah. Don't. It's not as good. It's much better on the Game Boy.
It is much better on the Game Boy. And if you're going to play a single Kingdom Hearts, I do honestly think this might be the one.
Wow. Wow. I love that.
Just because it's like, it's a game at the end of the day. Like,
Yeah.
outside of any story stuff, you can totally disconnect from it and still have a great time, I think.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
AJ, thank you for coming on and talking to us about this video game.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy to revisit it. A game I thought I would never, ever play again. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been a common contributor to the Good Time Hat.
Yeah, true. Our new the podcast that it's been named the whole time.
yes.
Oh yeah. You get it.
How immersive.
How immersive.
I love this ARG.
Yeah. Let's see. I would normally do an outro for us, but people know what it is if they've gotten to the end of this podcast here. AJ, do you want to tell people where they can find you or check out more of your work?
Yeah, I am on Blue Sky and Threads, and I still have a Twitter account that I do not log into. Sure. At AJ Fillari. Eventually, I will have a website that will also just be ajfillari.com. But if you follow me on the social medias, you'll know when that website goes live.
Yeah, true.
But in the meantime, you can listen to my work on Into the Aether, another show on The Worst Garbage. You can listen to the backlog of Asynchronous with me and Kim. Talked about all the Mass Effect games, 13 Sentinels, and Fire Emblem Three Houses. You can listen to Frog of the Week every Monday. Talk about a frog. Something new coming soon that I still can't talk about. I think that's everything. If you really want to interact with me, the best place is on the Discord.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts about my take of this being the one Kingdom Hearts to play. Let's start some discourse.
How about a little discourse as a treat?
How about a little discourse? Your show's too good vibes. I need discourse.
Y'all got any conflict out there? Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go hang out in the Discord. Go to podtimism.com. There's shit there. You can see it.
Podtimism? What's that?
It's a website.
Oh, okay.
It's got a link to a Discord. You can go there. It's self-explanatory. The people who have gotten to this part of the podcast know what our website is.
That's what you think.
Anyway, yeah, that is
There's
true.
one person out there who just listens to the last 5 minutes of a podcast.
A real sicko, if I'm being honest.
They're wanted in all 50 states.
I'm outros only Oscar. I only listen to the outros of podcasts.
Really good.
Oscar.
Really good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Below.
All right, gamers. We will see you another time. I hope you had a good day, and goodbye.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
TWG, the worst garbage. Online.